And one last thing I do need to announce is that we have our Black Friday sale. Huge discounts on our site. If you're looking for that stocking stuffer, that holiday gift, get yourself a run-through-wall smelling salt bottle or possibly a brick where you get 3 of them. You know, great gift for a friend. But I will stop talking so we can get into the Garrett Warnick interview. Here we go.
You are listening to the
Hey, MFM. See you on the lift. Back attack, dude.
Bon voyage!
Hey, yo, homies, good.
Slide down them big hills, you know what I mean, on the big, nice burgundy snowboard.
Welcome to The Bomb Hole, which is presented by Run Through a Wall Smelling Salts, best salts in the business. Today, co-hosting, we got Shane Charlebois in studio. Shane, what's happening?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me on again. And it's a complete honor to be around you guys. Silk, Worm, Chris.
Yeah, love it. It's going to be a great show today. I was wondering if you could do a little intro for Worm with your radio voice, Shane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but every time you're talking to a microphone, can't help but just go into stripper voice. So, I mean, to be on the spot, let's just go. All right, we got coming out of Mammoth, Nelson, BC. Well, actually, where do you come from?
Coming from the world.
Okay, coming straight out of the world, we got Garrett Warnick.
Thanks, Shane.
Worm, how we feeling?
We're good, dude. I'm super excited to be here. Definitely met a lot of people in snowboarding, but both of you guys have had a long-lasting impression on my life, so it's truly an honor.
Love it. Can't
Absolutely.
wait. Can't wait for this podcast. Can't wait to get into it. All right, Worm. Well, I think we should start with more recent stuff because you came into the game, you filmed insane video parts in the streets, park jumps, the whole nine, backcountry wedges, and then you made a huge transition into mainly just splitboarding and going on these psychotic 40-day missions to Alaska and riding your bike and all these things. So let's just start with when you switched from filming parts to this splitboarding mission that you've been on. How did that come to fruition?
Well, yeah, it's been a long road. Not this season, but the season before, I had the opportunity to ride my bike up to Alaska with some friends. And the season was winding away. I didn't have a project that was set. And my buddy Johan Rosen, who I did a movie with the year before, had this crazy idea to ride his bike, our bikes, from Terrace, BC up to Haines, Alaska. And
Wow.
It kept on getting bounced around. And as time was going on, like, I don't like to say no to things. And I didn't have anything else going on, so time started passing. This started to look like it was happening, and I was talking to more people, and everybody's like, what the hell are you going to do, like, middle of winter riding your bike up there? And it was definitely a little bit of a stress case coming into that, and I decided right then and there, like, I'm not going to practice, I'm not going to train, I'm not going to ride a bike, because if I ride a bike for 10 minutes, I'm going to be like, what the hell am I doing trying to ride a bike for the next 40 days?
Yes.
So I went up in there, like, no experience bike touring, nothing, and I just remember hopping on the bike. It was so much stuff to get dialed, to get ready for this trip, and when we're riding out, I got this little bike, I got the bike trailer on the back, I got my split board in my tent, and just that feeling that you have endless possibilities in front of you, like you have everything you need to survive and you're just on a mission, and the only thing that's going to prevent you from getting to where you want to go is your own willpower. And that mentality kind of translated to splitboarding. But anyways, we had this insane trip up, and we can talk a little bit more about that at some point, but we got up there and we got skunked. And Andrew Miller sends me this photo of this insane spine wall in Tahoe, and I'm just like, what the hell am I doing right now? Like, life's crumbling between my, like, you know, the goals have been just shattered. So I hightailed it out of that trip down to Mammoth and met up with Jeremy and those guys. And I'd been doing
Jones, for the record.
Jeremy Jones, the whole Jones squad. We got Andrew Miller, Jeremy, and I met Anaki Odriozola, who's this Argentinian cat who rides for Jones as well. And he actually has some ties into Salt Lake. His uncles, the Benegas brothers, live here. They're insane climbing guides, so that's kind of his background. And we met up in Mammoth in the spring. We did a camping mission with Jeremy out of Bishop for 3 or 4 nights, which was super rad. And just through that experience, we're like, you know what? We want to do real snowboarding, because we noticed in splitboarding you have a big kind of difference between core snowboarders and splitboarders. And my thing with splitboarding is, like, I don't want to go ride a couloir and be like, yeah, that's a 30-degree pitch in between rocks. Like, that's great. But, I wanted to do real snowboarding. But I wanted to have that splitboarding experience too. Like I just read this Craig Kelly quote in the other room that's just like, those tricks and that progression means a lot. But I'm out there for the experience. And splitboarding was giving me that experience, that well-rounded experience in the mountains, the time out there, the emotions to overcome hiking up, and also that all day you're just making decisions in the mountains about what you need to do to be safe. And it's so good for the brain. It's just like this constant vigilant approach to traveling through the mountains that I really felt impacted my life in a positive way. So I wanted to keep doing that, and I wanted to film a real snowboarding, and Anaki was down, so we just decided to team up after that, and we went to work with putting together Inyo and Worms Adventures. We never found a name, so at some point we're just like, yeah, this works. And after that, we went down to Argentina. First, we did a Kickstarter and tried to raise some money, and we had some snowboards from Jones to sell on the Kickstarter, and we just try to make it happen on our own, kind of. And that was the goal with this too, is like get something on YouTube, maybe make it a little bit more for the generic public, and include them in our adventure splitboarding, and try to do something that's unique. And that was kind of the concept behind what we wanted to do. And we wanted to film splitboarding that was going to be hopefully some grade A snowboarding as well, but also done on our splitboards, because that was something that I feel like had never been done before. And I've been snowboarding, and there's just so much emphasis out there when you're filming a video part to do the most insane trick. And I've seen so many people like go home at the end of the day so upset because they didn't get the Cab 9. But at the end of the day, you're in the mountains and you're with your best friends. And I think splitboarding kind of emphasizes that, because you get the time out there, and it really allows you to appreciate what you're doing.
I love it. Let's talk about Inyo and Worms Adventures. If you guys haven't seen on YouTube, they're awesome. Check them out. The most recent one, when you guys are in Alaska, you were explaining to me your process of you and Inyo. There's only two of you for a lot of this stuff, and how you document the snowboarding is fascinating.
Yeah, we had to figure it out. At some point, we just realized that we didn't have the budget for a cameraman, and it was an unnecessary expense. Sorry to say that, Shane.
Shane, your job's kind of obsolete.
But we were just only getting a little bit of money. So, we had to try to make do with what we had. So we got 2 drone controllers, and Inyo would, I'd usually most times go first. So he'd be at the top, filming me at the top. He lands the drone at the bottom. Switch it to my controller, get it up in the air, and then I film his line. So we're just like this little unit that's working pretty good out there. And, to talk a little bit more about being out there as 2 people, like you have no support, but at the same time, you're cued in as a 2-man crew. And you realize that the margin of mistake is basically none. And you work together to facilitate what you can do out there. And obviously, like, you're not going to be able to push the boundaries of snowboarding quite as much as if you have a helicopter and you got Tom Burt on the other side watching you to make sure you're not going to go into a Bergstrom. But we had the 2 of us, and we got a lot of respect, and we'd spent a lot of time together. So by the time we got to Alaska, we kind of had a pretty good vision of what we wanted to do. And we just tried to make it happen.
I love it.
Yeah, it's unreal. You were saying you guys spent 40 days in that tent?
I think we did, at least 40 days. So for the Alaska trip, we left Nelson end of February. We drove up to Blue River. First night, setting up this big tent, and it was like my dream tent, and the main pole just breaks, and we're in the rain on the side of the road next to the train. And I remember the tent breaks, and I just sat on the ground, and I was just didn't say a word to Anaki for like an hour. I just pouted. I was like, what are we going to do, man? And we got a hotel. We rode Blue River. We fixed the tent. We started heading north. And we went up to Haines Pass, and we camped in Haines Pass for like 3 weeks. We met up with my buddy Scott Smith, who's a snowmobiler, and he kind of showed us the ropes out there. And the way that the Alaska year was going, it was just a lot of sunshine. So that meant traveling really far into the mountains, like all that sort of first country stuff you see off the side of the road was all tracked, poached. So we were going like 3 mountain ranges back, and it was a huge introduction. And I remember we stayed with Scott for like 3 days, and then on our 4th day, we had this big mission, and we rode down into this ravine, and we're looking up like at this face like 3,000 vert above us, and we just started splitboarding up there, and the first 1,000 feet was like sheer ice, and we didn't notice it from the time, but we were stuck on our toes, just like grappling up this thing. So by the time we're halfway up, our calves are just burnt. We didn't have ice axes with us for this mission because we hadn't been getting that gnarly beforehand. But we made it up there. We rode this face. The snow was shit, but that kind of opened our eyes because this thing was like looming out over our heads, 3,000 feet, you know, another 2 miles. And we made it there and we did it. So we were just kind of like, okay, the possibilities are endless. It's just up to us to get there. And that became the mission. Just like, how are we going to get to the top of these mountains?
And I think it would be interesting for the people that don't understand Alaska and the vastness of this range. Like, generally everybody else is getting dropped off via helicopter on top of all these peaks. And you guys are essentially, I mean, snowmobile to walk up these insane ranges, and how much determination and everything else that takes.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, we got a beater sled. I bought a sled for $3,500 a couple of years ago, and it still works barely. So our ability on the snowmobile was to get us into the general realm of things, and then we just take it from there on the split boards. But it was definitely an eye-opening experience. I first went up to Alaska in like 2016 with Shane and Justin and Absinthe, and I remember I got dropped off on this peak. The first peak I ever rode up there was with Nico and Cont'd, and both of them go. They take all the snow with them, and I just remember being at the top, and I was like, you know, almost in tears. I was like, how the fuck am I going to ride down this thing? And I took a photo up there.
That's it.
That's it. That was my first run.
Yeah. Welcome.
You know, like 10 minutes before we're in the yurt, you have no idea you're going to go snowboard. And then all of a sudden you're up there and you're just thrown into the mix, which I do like splitboarding because you have 4 hours of getting ready to do what you're going to do.
That's what I was going to ask you guys. When you would do these missions, like what time would you start to sled and then trek? Is this like you starting at 2 a.m?
Well, you know, AK, it's kind of like the morning and the afternoon are your times to do things. So we'd either, you know, for a while when we were up there, we were just doing the afternoons, and then we'd switch to the morning, and we were just trying to figure out the best program. And everything comes into the light at the different times, so you just get out there and you have to sit around and wait for a long time. But it was crazy. I took this photo, and I just remember seeing mountains as far as the eye could see up there. It was this crazy range. And this year I had looked at the photo, and I figured out where I was, and I was navigating through these mountains that, you know, 10 years ago were just, it was not a realization that I even had back then that you could walk through these mountains and kind of understand them. And then to look at that photo and then be like, oh, that's where I was, and that's how I need to get there, and this is the route there. I was like mind blowing, like, you know, it's such an eye-opening experience.
Well, that's why I'm wondering, because back in the day, I remember with Vole, Jules, Vlad, we were all like, yeah, we could probably on a down day just snowmobile from 33 Mile up to the zone. And it was the end of the day, and we were just getting outside of like the top of the trees. And we were like, this is the most insane journey ever. So picturing you guys getting all the way there and then trekking up those runs, I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah,
sure.
It was wild for sure. I mean, we went down, and we were going to ride this line Caffeine. That's kind of a classic. And just me and Anaki, we had a weather window. So we drove down from the pass one day, and we had a snowmobile across the endless rivers. And it's like the springtime. So that's mission number 1. And it was just such a hell mission to get across these rivers. You're just like full pin, and there's like 4-foot ice banks that go down. So you kind of got to launch the sled to a little bit of a pond skim and then just hope you get up on the other side. So we make it through that. We get all the way up there, and then from there, it's like a 3-hour, 4-hour split board. And I remember this was our first big mish of the year, trying to go to Caffeine, and it's a grind, dude. I got up there, and we started walking, and Anaki's behind me, and I just like, we got on the glacier, and all of a sudden the snow gets a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper, and all of a sudden you're walking in 8 inches of powder. And at this point, it's just like full bore, like I couldn't walk any faster. I just see what's there, I see how bad I want it, and it's like, you know, all that's left is getting yourself to the top of it.
Insane.
Wow.
I love it. I would love to talk about, too, while you're out there and you're camping, I heard a really funny story from Andrew Miller about how you guys are like in a tent. You have the stove going, the wood burning stove to keep it warm. you're like editing clips and then the monster crew rolls up and you guys are like in your underwear or something like that?
Yeah, probably. Well, we were just living on the side of the road for like 40 days up there in this tent. And we would switch locations every now and then, but we were pretty locked off. So we were a novelty item. Like the monster crew rolls by and they got all the Euros with them and stuff. And we just become the second attraction, you know. It's like, oh, look at the bears. Look at the worm and the Inyo, you know. And those guys were cracking up for sure. And that's been my experience. The year I rode my bike up to Alaska, we ended up staying at the wildlife place. This guy, Steve, runs this crazy place. And
Steve Korschel.
And we only had like $50 a night total for 4 of us for our budgie. And it was between like this, you know, shack in the woods, no electricity, no internet, off in the backwoods, or it was Steve Korschel's house. So we stayed up there for forever, and there's like bears and wolves because he runs this wildlife park, and the whole place we're staying in just reeks of fish. And it was the same scenario, like Sammy Carlson would roll through for the tour, and it was just like we were the next attraction. It's like, look at the bears, look at the bikers. So that's kind of been my experience going up to AK.
That's really cool you guys got to stay with him.
It was a trip, man. It was a trip. You'd be out on the patio having a little spliff before dinner, and you'd be looking at the wolves and the moose and stuff. And we'd go get groceries and come back, or we'd go splitboarding and come back and be super tired. And you got to walk by all the grizzly bear encounter. And it was crazy, man. It's scary walking by the grizzly bear cage at night, and you're holding all your ice cream and stuff. You're just like, okay, last mission of the day.
So I heard another funny story about one of the heli crews showing up, and you wanted to maybe beat him to a particular line.
Yeah, well, me and Iñaki had rode Caffeine, and it turns out that we were the first people to ride it all year. And it's kind of a classic in AK. It's a really good face to step to if you have that sort of freestyle background, but you do want to do some big mountain riding. So I guess Ryland had talked to the guide a little bit, and maybe we didn't know, but there was a little bit of a race going on, and we took off from camp at 4 in the morning or something like that. So the advantage you have going on foot in AK is you can take off in the dark, and the helis have to wait till first light. So we saw all those dudes, and the next day we took off at 4 in the morning, and we headed up on the long, dusty trail up there. And it was a mish, dude. It was a crazy mission, because at some point, Ryland gave us the talk in the beginning of the day. He's like, all right, guys, we got to keep it chill. We got to keep it mellow. Nobody's going to get hurt. We're going to take our time up there. And like 5 minutes after the snowmobile ride, it's like, we better fucking go. Everybody's stressing out, you know? So we finally get up there, and it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and we make it to the top, and it's me, Iñaki, Ryland, and Chris, and we all get to the top of the peaks up there, and we're standing up there, and right when we get to the top, the heli rolls straight up towards Caffeine, and it does this little twist, and we just all throw our boards up like this, and the heli takes off the other way. It's such a sick feeling, dude.
Wow.
Not to clown on those guys, because they're like the best snowboarders, and, you know, I got a lot of respect for them. But
who was that crew?
I think it was Sage, maybe Judd, all the monster dudes.
Damn, shout out to those guys, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sure they crushed it. You got a helicopter, you can go to a million places.
But Caffeine, I mean, it is legendary for, if people don't know, going back to Absinthe, and I mean, so many moments that people might not realize come from Caffeine.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's one of those peaks in Alaska that you're definitely drawn to. It's a filmer's delight, you know. You just got a lot of different lines and some freestyle, and some you can push it a little bit bigger. So that was just amazing. And to get up there first light is like unbelievable. You're watching the sunrise come up over the peaks in AK, and you're up there. And
did you guys think about hitting the gap that Breezy and Torstein hit?
Dude, I don't think it's there anymore.
Really?
The glacier's melted out.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the other thing. How did you guys know where to go across the glacier?
Don't go into the holes.
Yeah, the ones that are covered by snow.
Yeah, but stay away from those. If there's a small indentation in the snow, anything, you're just like searching for a safe route. And after that, we got Jason up into the mix.
Jason
Robinson. So we wanted to fly in with Drake, and this was something I was trying to do the year before on the bike ride, but we got shut out weather-wise. So this year it was like we definitely wanted to get out on the glacier. And that was the next piece of the puzzle. So we did all this stuff in AK, which was really great warm-up. And, you know, we kind of had searched for for a crew in Alaska, I was looking for a guide to kind of help us out, make sure that we were going to be safe, and we weren't able to line that up. So at the end, we're like, all right, we're just going. And at some point, it was just going to be me and Anaki, but then Jason signed on, which was awesome, and another local there in Haynes, Carver Colbeck. He's a local kid. So we had a 4-man mission, and still trying to line things up with Drake is pretty crazy. He's a pretty wild guy, and I was calling him like every day, just trying to get out there. And I remember calling him one time, and he just answers the phone, and he's like, "What the fuck do you want today, Garrett?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, dude, I'm so sorry. Like maybe I shouldn't have called." He's like, "We're on the phone now. You better start talking." So you're running this thin line between trying to get out there because like that's your life goal is to go fly into the glacier and do this. And you don't want to be too overzealous because you're just going to piss off a lot of people. And there's a kind of a fine line you got to weave up there because everybody's got their own personality, and how you interact with that person is going to directly affect your experience out there. So we were able to make it happen. We did a scope flight. We didn't have a lot of money. We had like $4,000 this year. That was our airplane budget, so it wasn't a lot. And we found a spot that was unfortunately still in helicopter terrain just because we couldn't fly far enough to get out of it. But we had a spot. We were all lined up, and we got out there, got landed on a good day. Actually,
So just to be totally clear for people that are unsure, a prop plane flew you in and dropped you off.
yeah, like a 1967 Cessna or something like that, 4-seater, fills up with gear, takes you 30 minutes through the mountains, drops you off on a glacier. You've got everything you need to ride and snowboard, survive, and you stay out there. I got my inReach, so I'm going to ride him when we're done. We've got like a month worth of food. That's our survival time limit.
How big does that look? A month of food.
Well, that's a whole nother story.
We're here for that story. Yeah. I mean, think about it. When you go get like a week's amount of food that you go put in a fridge, you guys have a month of food. How big?
Month of dry food.
Yeah.
It's like probably 2 trash bags full of dry food,
Yeah.
which starts tasting pretty bad after about week 3.
Did you guys ever see any animals?
Nope, nothing up there, which was great because we had some issues. That's what I was saying. Driving up, like first day, 10 breaks. Next day, we go snowboard in Blue River, and I got a 2004 Toyota Tacoma. And it's filled with 10 split boards, the snowmobile, this massive tent, a generator. It's, doing a wheelie on the way up to Alaska. There's not room for anything. So I had this great idea to take all of our dry food and pack it into the side of the truck where my little sled deck doesn't quite reach. And on day 2, we come back from riding Blue River, and the crows have just absolutely ravaged us. So
The tax man.
yeah, on day 2, we had lost the tent. We'd lost, a third of our food supply, and things were looking pretty meek at that point. But anyways, once we got up to the glacier, we had experienced all that loss. Our food was good to go. We get dropped off there, and that was just like, it was so much more intense than everything we had been doing because the Bergstroms up there were just huge. The train that you had to travel through was really big. And then whatever lifelines we had of being, on the front range of those mountains was gone because now we're deep and nobody's coming to help. So,
And that's the other question. How do you guys judge the snow when you're out there? Because down in the flats is so different than on that huge face.
well, you walk up the mountain. And the
Yeah.
whole time you walk up, you're testing your feet, you're doing little pits. And I learned this from Jeremy. Like, Jeremy's the king of doing the micro pit. You stomp in and you just jam your fingers through the snow. You do whatever you can. You do a little pat, and you just see how it feels. And you got a long time to make those decisions on the way up. And usually by the time you get to the top, I think anybody that hikes lines in Alaska will know this. By the time you get your snowboard on, all your worries are gone because you've been fucking clinging to the side of this mountain for the last hour, and you're actually in a lot more of a dangerous situation then. As far as something rips or anything like that, not being on your snowboard is a bad place to be. So by the time you finally get to the top of these mountains and you get your snowboard on, it's like all systems go, and you're pretty fired up at that moment.
No doubt.
I have a note here because I talked to Hosnick yesterday, and he mentioned that you rode with Nicholas Mueller, your first time in Alaska, and he said that you were very observant, like you were watching everything he did and like a sponge absorbing it. And he mentioned something about like, when you get to the top of a knife edge, you like make a nice platform for yourself.
Yeah.
And so I would love to hear you talk about learning from Nico and any of those particular things that you did learn.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I got to ride with Nico quite a bit throughout the years, and he's definitely got a crazy eye for features. So, I mean, I feel like that's the big thing is just watching him, how he interacts with terrain. So that's been a big influence in my life is maybe not, doing a 1080, maybe just doing a 720, but doing it in a place where you kind of have the natural contours lining up like, oh, that's a spot for a front seven. Not because you built it, but because there's a wind lip and you're coming in off your front side edge and the landing is a little bit toe edge. So it's just like, obviously. And Nico was kind of the king of that. But I remember like second day in Alaska, we went up there and the guide's all like, everybody stay away from that cornice. And Nico drops in and does a nollie backside seven off it. And the guide's like, or you could do that. So that was pretty crazy. But this first year going out there, Nico was like the king of, he just got up there and he'd start shoveling. And he's like, if you're scared, whatever, just make a platform. And that's been key to my success up there because I'm always super timid. Like I don't come from a climbing background. And so like Inaki, he's a super strong mountain climber, but going up is where I'm most terrified, I don't rock climb.
So like you're on the knife edge of a huge peak, it's scary. So you just make a stable place for you to sit and feel safe, basically.
Exactly. The better you can feel at the top. And I mean, you're on edge for hours at a time sometimes. So if you can get up and get yourself something that you feel comfortable with, and that's another thing I've learned, like hiking peaks, is if you don't top out, you probably don't have a sweet place to put your snowboard on. And you don't necessarily know if you can top out at the bottom because it's just going to be up to you, like how dangerous the climbing gets and how much you want to push it. And at some point, if you do want to turn around, you're on the side of a mountain that's 55 degrees. You don't have any room. So even turning around, your snowboard's on your back. Now, all of a sudden, it's pushing you off the mountain because you just turned around. So the first thing you got to do is try to just make sense of that area and get something that you can even strap in on. And I mean, luckily, a lot of times you're topping out and you can figure out a good platform, but that's super key. And that happened that year because I was riding with Nico. I was kind of on the B crew and Absinthe and Lucas, Jason, all these guys were coming out. So kind of on some off days, I'd come in and there was like kind of a BA crew sort of thing going on, which was great. I was just psyched to be there. But I did get the opportunity to ride this thing that I think Manuel coined, Spine East Dragons, which was like the first insane, probably the sickest spine line of my life. Maybe we'll get a photo of it or something. But that time, it was just me and Mark Solers and Vladdy. And Mark's first day in AK, I'd already been there for a month, and we're flying around. This is the goal. This is what we're going to do. We get up there, and we're flying around, and Mark's looking at it. He's like, I'm not going to get out of the helicopter. I just got up here. And Vladdy's like, you're fucking Mark Solers. You're going to get out of the helicopter, and you're going to ride this. And he's like, yeah, you're fucking Mark Solers. You're going to get out of the helicopter and ride this. Like, he had no choice. So I remember that was the first time in my life where I got dropped off on the peak where it was like, I felt the weight on my shoulders to start doing something, and I just started digging a platform. What else can you do? Start digging a platform, and that was key. And me and Mark both rode that, and I don't think anything crazy came out of that session, but I think for both of us, it was a pretty good realization of like, all right, we can make some moves out here.
Well, it's so cool that you're tapped in because I think for a lot of people, I know when we were kids, growing up in the East Coast, you watch Tom Burt come down some snow and it's like Alaska. And if you don't know, it's like, oh yeah, that looks pretty mellow. But then you get there and you're shitting your pants as someone's trying to convince you to get out of the helicopter, So the fact that you're tapping in like that, it's so cool. And since day one, I feel like at least what I've noticed about you is you don't reveal maybe being afraid of things that others are afraid of. So it seems like you're continuing that.
All right, we're going to interrupt this programming to talk about one of my favorite brands, Autumn Headwear. Their motto is Style Matters, and it shows. If you look at their team, they got some of the most stylish riders on the planet. It's rider-owned. This is a brand owned by snowboarders. Brad Alband is the genius behind it. He's done great work over there. And they have great fits on the beanies, most importantly. Here at the Bomb Hole, we love what we call a deep resi fit. The reservoir tip, so to speak. So they have the surplus fit, which is kind of a resi. They have the shorty fit, which is shallow. You might catch Silk D wearing one of those. They also have the simple fit that's right in between. And I was just on their website. The apparel is impeccable. So great company, rider owned. If you're interested in getting a great beanie this winter, head on over to autumnheadwear.com and use promo code BOMBHOLE for 20% off your order, and keep that dome piece looking great with an autumn bonnet. Now, do you find yourself slowing down a little bit in your older age, maybe getting off hill a little earlier? Well, you could be dehydrated. 75% of Americans are dehydrated, and that goes up when you're at elevation, when you're in the mountains. So I drink Bubs Hydrate or Die hydration packets. There's 2,000 milligrams of electrolytes. There's no added sugar. There's no artificial flavors. Let me tell you, when I'm hydrated, I ride better. I can ride longer. I have more energy. All in all, my vitality is just better. So if you're interested in picking up some Bubs Naturals Hydrate or Die, head on over to bubsnaturals.com and use promo code BOMBHOLE for 20% off your order. And stay hydrated, people, with Bubs Naturals Hydrate or Die.
Yeah, I think.
Hang on, before you get into that, I'm gonna piggyback off of Shane's question, and I'm gonna get into a guest question from none other than Bodie Merrill, if I can find it. Here we go.
Yo, Worm, Bodie here. We've been on a lot of amazing adventures together, and there have been a couple moments that stood out to me where you seem to have no fear or anxiety about repercussions. And one, we were surfing in Portugal at Super Tubos, which is a super localized surf break, and you paddled right to the main peak and started trying to catch waves. And the locals were pissed and yelling at you and heckling you. And I remember one guy even like pulled your leash and snaked you like into a wave on the inside. And I thought you were going to get your ass beat. But you didn't. And the second was we were hitting Earl Grey, and you showed up after Hans and I had already hit it a couple times. We probably spent an hour debating speed and like doing speed checks. We were terrified. But you just went right to the top and hit it without hesitation, and I thought that was pretty crazy. But I've always been super envious of your approach to life, and my question is, where does this mentality stem from? Like, where do you get your confidence from? And are there any times that it has gotten you into trouble? I can't wait to listen to your episode. Love you, buddy.
Thank you, Bodie. What a great guy. Stoked to hear that question. Definitely always scared in the mountains. And I think now being on a splitboard tip, that's really something you got to have. Like, you got to be scared, to the point where you're being safe. Being scared is a little bit being safe. But I think my whole life I just wanted to push myself out of the comfort zone as much as I could. And that was something I wanted to do early on with snowboard trips too. I realized, like, all right, how lucky am I to go to these places like Europe and Japan and stuff. And it was just whatever I could do to get myself out of my comfort zone. And I just remember, like, being young, when I was like 18, I went up to Yosemite and backpacked up there for like 4 nights by myself. And it was a crazy, scary experience. But just like anytime you're out of your comfort zone, anytime you're feeling those feelings, like, that's when self-growth happens. So I think, like, growing up, that was a big part of my MO. And I think I saw a lot of people kind of stuck in a small mountain town mentality. And I didn't want to end up, kind of being the guy who only knew Mammoth or being the guy that only knew this. So I just had that desire at a young age to just kind of try to step out of what I knew and push myself in directions that were a little bit more uncomfortable.
And then particularly talking about Earl Grey, which is a huge kind of ravine gap step down that is psychotic. It sounds like you went up there. I actually think I was there that day, but
You were there.
I think I doubled you up.
You were tripled us up.
And then we buried it. That was
in relation to what Bodie was talking about, we looked at that thing for probably 8 years before that because it was so insane. And then the fact that, like you said, that you just rolled up, hit it, made it look casual.
Bodie's a nice guy. But that was the After Forever year. So I'd spent a good amount of time with you, Shane. And that was my second year filming for Absinthe. My first year filming for Absinthe, I kind of came into the crew about halfway through the season. So my second year, I was just like, I wanted to go full in on a snowboard part and try to do the best snowboarding I could do. And we went to Europe, and the first thing we hit was that camel toe jump, and I was up at the top, rock, paper, scissors. It was my turn to go first, so I was just like pointing it at the biggest jump that I had ever hit before. Somehow back sevened it first try. That was the only thing that got landed that day, which was insane. It was like, it was crazy.
And
jump.
we should also mention that the camel toe jump is where our buddy Vladdy, his area of Champery, Port du Soleil. It's a legendary jump. And how big would you say it is?
It's a solid 100.
It's pretty solid.
Solid 100. So that we hit that camel toe jump, and then like a couple days after that, Vladdy's like, dude, I got this sick step down. And it's a step down over one of the cat tracks.
The Morjan one?
Yeah, on the resort there. So Jagger helped me build it, and it was all fucked up, and we had to put all these like crazy little sticks and stuff just to get this lip to stick on the side of this mountain. And I remember I was done building it, and then Jagger's like, yeah, I'm good on this one. So I was like, okay, shit.
Yeah, because that one looked insane.
Yeah, so I hit that one, did like a back 3, back 7, and a backflip. And then when I'm done, Vladdy's like, dude, that's so sick. I've showed everybody this and nobody's wanted to ride this. And I was like, dude, I thought you showing me something that had been done before. Like I had no clue. But Vladdy was rad. Like we had a good relationship, and he was really good at pushing me in, maybe that wasn't the safest way, but I guess he had the confidence in my riding to make that happen. So those were definitely two of my scariest things. And I remember coming back here to Salt Lake, and I was like, I'm done. I've done what I needed to do. And then Bodie's like, you want to go to Logan with me and Hans the next day? And we got out there, and that thing was just super crazy and terrifying too. But coming after those other 2 jumps, and I told the guys, I was like, dude, I just had these 2 crazy experiences trying to hit jumps first tries that I was super scared of. Like, I'm sitting out of this one. And Hans and Bodie, I forget who hit it first, but Hans did this crazy front 7, and it was just unbelievable. Like, the way his board landed in the track, and he didn't catch, it was just crazy. And then Hans tapped out, and then, like, you guys want to hit this? And I'd already seen those guys ride it. And also, we had Chris Granier, like Danimals was out there. There was a stacked crew at the bottom. So I was like, I was also on this tip back then, and I still kind of am. That's like, I just want to backflip the biggest thing I can hit, like skier mentality, kind of like, dude, if you can hit it, backflip it. That's the coolest thing, like the giantest backflip you could do.
I remember when you did it, and you were like mid backflip. It looked like you were skydiving.
Yeah.
I don't think if you've ever seen this jump, it's like a 60-foot step down gap. Something like that.
It is ridiculous. You go over the ravine, so yeah, you have this moment where you leave the lip and you're over the ravine, and the landing kind of jacks back up on the other side. But at that moment, it's like a 40. I don't know. The lip is probably like 40 or 50 feet vertical drop kind of into that ravine. But yeah, it's just building confidence throughout the year. And I think at that point I was in a pretty good place, and I had watched those guys do it. So it was pretty easy to step up to it. And luckily I didn't have to go first.
What about the surfing story?
Oh man, fucking surfing. Well, I don't think I knew better then. That was the thing. And I remember we were with Druku, Andrew Mariner, and Bodie. We were on a Billabong trip, and we went out there, and those guys were just taking every single wave. And after a certain point, you're like, dude, just give me a wave. And I couldn't have had that mentality, apparently, at this zone. There was no waves for people like us out there. And I was pushing it, and I definitely learned from that session. Next time I went back to Portugal to go surfing, I kept it pretty mellow.
Nice. So some guy snaked you though, and like pulled your
So this is at Super Tubos, and there's this crazy jetty that comes out, and it's super territorial with boogie boarders. And there's like 20 people on this jetty all yelling at me, just like cussing me out in Portuguese, telling me to get out of the water and stuff. It was pretty intense. And the worst thing is, Andrew, being a nice guy that he is, he gave me an orange wetsuit. If you piss somebody off and you're in a black wetsuit, there's a chance you can get away with it. But if you piss somebody off and you're in an orange wetsuit, you got a target on your back, and everybody knows who you are for the rest of the session. So, I don't think the orange wetsuit helped me at all.
Classic. Fantastic. Well, let's run it back. We covered some current. Let's go back to early days of Worm. Where are you from? Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to ask that because in relation to, you were saying you don't have a rock climbing background or whatever. I mean, where is the background of you getting into the extreme levels that you're from?
Well, I've always been drawn to try to film a part that had everything. And, you know, I wanted to ride those big lines, and I wanted to do rails. Like, I wanted to be an ATV, and I think my parts hopefully reflected that at some point, especially through absent and forward. Like, I'd make a point to ride backcountry and rails, and then, well, you get kicked out of rails. They're made out of steel. You're in the middle of the city. So at some point I was like, yeah, the mountains are pretty desirable. But I mean, a lot of this happened getting on Jones, and even my first year on Jones, I was really reluctant to splitboarding. Kind of, I touched on it before, but you meet a lot of splitboarders that are splitboarders because they walk uphill fast, and that has nothing to do with snowboarding with me. You know, I don't care how fast you walk up the hill. I'm a snowboarder. Like, you know, change that tape. Fucking, you got to know all this stuff. You got to know the history of snowboarder, and but yeah.
Thank you for changing that tape.
The essential history of snowboarding.
History of snowboarding.
Right there.
Is all you need to check out is a website that is not operational called Change That Tape.
You got to know, like, you know, who's done what, where it was done. I mean, I feel like that snowboard history to me is pretty important, and just like staying kind of relevant, because there's always that kind of divide in splitboarding where you got to go a lot of granola munchers, and then you got a lot of people that snowboard, and there wasn't a lot of crossover. That's kind of like why we wanted to do the Inyo and Worms adventures. But
where was the first place you snowboarded when you were growing up?
I snowboarded in Mount Bachelor growing up, so we had a lot of like side hits and stuff like that. But once I got on Jones and started splitboarding, I met a lot of people that were really influential in bringing me out to the mountains, and just I mean, I want to do the best snowboarding I can, and you get out on a splitboard and the possibilities are endless. And like Jeremy has this great quote. He's like, you make it to one line and then you see three others. And that's pretty much happened to me since I started snowboarding. And also just a lot of cool shit out there that you can snowboard on that you can't get to any other way. So it's been pretty fun to explore that.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's run it back to the beginning. Early days of Worm.
Early days. I grew up in Bend, Oregon, riding Mount Bachelor. We had MBSEF, which was stacked with like young Ben Ferg and all the Bend kids. Spencer was doing it. It was pretty sick. After school program, kind of. So we'd snowboard the mountain a lot. And then when I was like 12, I ended up in Mammoth with my whole family, which was super rad. And then it was just riding a lot of park. Got a bunch of homies like Jared DeWood and Nate and all the Mammoth boys, and we just go up there. And I remember back then I just go up and I'd do front one, switchback one, cab one, and try to go all the way to 1080. And that was just like what I was doing every day. And that was super rad. And some point, you know, I was doing some slopestyle competitions and stuff like that. And actually meeting Jagger was the first time I realized that you can just film snowboarding and you don't have to have like a film crew. Like I'd watch snowboard videos religiously, but it didn't feel like something that was necessarily attainable or doable. I just didn't know like you can kind of do it at a low budget effort. And then I met Jagger and I watched his like first year part that he'd ever done. And then, after that, me and Mitch Richmond, hard body shout out, and Jagger, we all had a place in Mammoth. And then that's when the filming kind of happened. And
I want to interrupt you because we have a guest question from none other than hard body, aka Mitch Richmond. Here we go. Let's hit it.
Okay, what up, Bombhole? This is Mitch Richmond, longtime listener, first-time caller. You have my dear friend Worm in the booth. Wormshaw, miss you, buddy. I have always admired your attitude towards life and snowboarding. If someone lands a trick, you are just as stoked as they are. You bring everyone's mood up, so thank you for that. So with your great attitude and being such an ATV on your snowboard, I think the people would like to know who your biggest influences are. And why did we start calling you Wormshaw? That's it. Enjoy the rest of the show.
nice, dude. It's great to hear hard body, aka Mitch Richmond's voice. What a classic and great character. He's the first guy I ever hit a street spot with. We went out to Harding High, and he was scraping the snows off the stairs. And I was like, what the hell are you doing, man? And he's like, no, this is what you do. And you put a little bit on the edge so you can ride down. So I had great parental supervision out there for my first trips, for sure. Influences has always been like Gigi, Nico, those guys. Watching Absinthe, that was the holy grail for me. Future Proof, Saturation Pop. And that style of snowboarding for sure. And then being with Mitch and Jagger, we were into we'd buy Deja Vu religiously, and Get Real we watched like 50 times at home every night. And those guys were really into street riding. So definitely like those two guys right there were big influences on me. And we started filming in Mammoth, and then I took off, made a full part with Derek Weimer, and Mitch was filming for Think Tank, and we filmed a little bit with Ross Phillips that year too. So that was like my first intro to filming snowboarding. And yeah, I think, Chris, you were one of my favorite riders for sure. Like, me and Mitch idolized you.
Thanks, Worm.
Yeah, no problem, dude. I mean, you were doing it out there yourself, switch front board and everything in sight. Yeah, so just a lot of influences. I liked everything that I was watching.
He asked you about the nickname Wormshaw.
Well, Worm, so I moved to Mammoth. I started doing like the after school program in Mammoth, and Jared Anderson was actually the coach for, I think, just 1 year, Jed's older brother. So he saw me cutting through the lift line. I think I was worming my way to the front of the lift lines, and he called me Worm, which is obviously stuck. And then at this point in my life, I was also a big Bradshaw fan too. So the Wormshaw came together. I don't know a lot of people could call me Wormshaw, but Mitch, I'll take it.
Nice.
So Wormshaw, you're filming this video part. I actually watched the first video part you ever filmed, where you aforementioned Harding and all that stuff. That was some heat, dude. That was the first one, went on Vimeo. How was your first year filming? How was that experience?
It was super amazing for sure. I mean, you're on the road all year. You got no money. You're 3 or 4 people piled into a small car driving to Minnesota. So there's definitely the inner conflicts that happened. But being with Mitch is like the best guy ever, and took me under the wing. And that was a great experience. And I think once you start filming video parts, you don't want to go back. You get the clip high, you're driving around looking for spots. All the homies are shoved into the back of the car. You're getting denied at the border because you have like 5 scoops and a generator and lights in the back. And I mean, it's just good times.
I love it. And then the following year, you got asked to film for the Snowboarder Mag movie Forward, which seemed like that was your breakout year. How was that opportunity?
That was epic. So I filmed this part, put it on Vimeo, and then I think I'd always been doing Super Park and kind of doing good in Super Park. So I hit the radar of Bridges and the Snowboarder Mag guys, and they were throwing together
You got a standout.
Yeah, 1 year I did Mount Hood Meadows. It was rad. Yeah, I remember
What
that.
year was that?
I think it was the Forward year, because I had done a bunch of Super Parks and I'd come super close. But Nils,
What year was the Forward year?
2014.
2014, yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Nils and Hans had always like edged me out a Super Park standout. So I remember that year I was like fucking going up there every day. But Forward was crazy. Like the super rad thing was, it was me, like Sam, Blake, Hans, Nils. Nobody had snowmobiled before. Nobody had built a powder jump before. So we were all out there learning together. And it was just like the most epic introduction into snowboarding for sure. And we got a lot of stuff done. It was pretty rad.
I remember the most notable clip for me. I think we used to talk about it a lot, but I used to bring up the Natty Back 7 that you did on that finger. That thing was amazing. That was, a Natty Back 7 is not a rookie type of move to do when you get in the mountains. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, dude, spite will take you a long way, so you know that. It was a tough year for sure, and Trent was kind of leading the charge, and he knew that he had to babysit us a little bit just because we didn't exactly know what we were doing. But the MO there was like, we're only going to hit jumps when it's sunny, and you're only going to hit a jump that you build the night before, because you guys are all park kids, and you're not going to figure it out if the lip is not iced up and firm. So that was working really good. But I remember we went out to, it's Mosquito in Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went out to Mosquito, and we were just riding things. And Trent's like, Travis Rice already did the most insane thing that will ever be done here, and you will never do a Natty Back 7. And I was just like, this wall was like super steep, so when you're on your toes, you could just like already be getting that pre-spin going on, and the wall was so steep that you weren't gonna like jack off from the powder. So I was able to do a back 7. It was one of those days where it was just so deep you could land Japan style, and was able to land that, and I was super stoked.
Yeah. Launched back 7 into powder. I did notice that you just said jack off into powder there. That was pretty fantastic. But anyway, sorry.
Everybody's done it.
Everybody's done it.
Yep.
Okay, big news from our friends over at Mammoth Mountain. They are now open for the 24-25 season, and they've got big changes. A reinvigorated, brand new main park layout with new features, more jumps, and brand new jibs. Mammoth is also bringing back the hemlocks on the backside of the mountain. You're going to have to hike a little bit. You're going to have to unstrap, but don't worry, because picture this. A freestyle big mountain paradise with a little bit of help from park crew. If you like what you're hearing, check out mammothmountain.com for current deals and to check out their loaded events calendar for the season. That's mammothmountain.com. Are you like me? You using your goggles from 6 seasons ago? A little outdated, don't fit that well anymore, a little scratched up. Well, might be time for an upgrade. And we at the Bomb Hole highly recommend that you consider the Oakley Line Miner Pro. It features Oakley's patented switch lock technology, which utilizes 6 strategically placed magnets around the frame, paired with 2 mechanical locks for a quick and secure lens change. With a 2-lens bundle, riders can effortlessly swap their lenses out to adapt to the changing weather and lighting conditions, making the mountain adventures go on longer. So if you're in the market for a new pair of goggles, check out the Line Miner Pro or any other incredible Oakley product at oakley.com.
Okay, so you finished filming this forward part. It's with Snowboarder Mag. It had a lot of firepower behind it. It was, there's like articles in the magazine and everything. Did it help your career out at all, so to speak, or put you on the map, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. The next year was still up in the air. Like, I don't think at that point I was like, I'm filming a video part every year, just because I hadn't really crashed into that scene yet, and forward was not something that was going to be done another year. So after that, I remember it was New Year's Day in Bend, Oregon, and I was pulling bunch for Justin Norman, J Norm, old local Bend guy, and I got a call from Bodie, and he's like, dude, can you come out to Michigan tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, I can, for sure. And Bodie was filming Real Snow with Shane and Justin, and I think J-Rob was out there but had to take off. So I packed the bags and went out to Michigan, and I met Justin and Shane for the first time. And for the first week, I think I was super nervous. And then at some point, these guys were all like, you should drive home with Justin. You should drive home with Justin. And then in the car, at some point, I was like, so, Justin, like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, you can do this. And after that, I was like, all right, I'm doing Absinthe. And the next step was just taking off to Europe and hanging out in Europe as long as possible. I think I knew right away how special that opportunity was. And I knew, like, Europe was a place I just wanted to be. It was culturally amazing. The snowboarding was amazing. I didn't know how amazing it was. But after that, I just took off, went to Europe. I remember I had to travel maybe from Paris or something on the train, rented some random Swiss town, took a bunch more buses and trains, and then Shane picked me up that night. And remember, we saw a giant stag in the road on the way back. That was crazy, mystical stag. And then that year in Absinthe was pretty special because it was the first year that me and Max Burry was doing it, and Sevi was doing it. So Vlad had this like troop of young kids that were still trying to figure it out, and we just spent the whole rest of the winter in Europe, and that was amazing. Like,
we should also give a plug out to David Vladica.
Yeah, big
because
shout.
A lot of people can go to Europe, but you're never going to have the trip in Europe like the Absinthe Euro trip, for sure. Like, Vlad has that place dialed.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, that was so lucky, and getting to spend time out there, and then being with Max and Sevi, who were still trying to figure it out, and Vlad was helping us. But it was so much different than my relationship with Trent, because Vladdy was kind of like this big brother, and we had a lot of like back and forth, just bickering at each other. And part of that is he would tell me like, no, it's not going to work. And I would just be like, no, fuck you. Like, I'm going to build it. And then it wouldn't work. And I had so much trial and error out there that it was just really great to like, all right, you're right. There's no speed for that. But getting into the backcountry, like, especially now, just figuring things out, like what you want to snowboard on, and there's endless possibilities, just being out there and trying to discover like what I want to snowboard on and what I want to get clips on. And at first you're just trying to grind and do anything because you know your opportunity and you're stressed and you want to get shots and you want to progress. Is like first year filming for Absinthe. So that was a huge deal and a lot of weight on my shoulders, I think. But at some point, you go from like, okay, I could just get a shot on anything to like, okay, what do I want to snowboard on? What makes sense to me? And that was really cool being out there trying to figure that out with those guys.
Dude, Europe, when you're an ATV snowboarder like yourself, I mean, remember those trips to like Saint Luc? I mean, you go, or what was it, Zinal?
Yeah, insane.
We were up there, and that place is just a ridiculous mountain. We were there with Manuel, a few other people. And but then in the parking lot, there's just the most insane down flat down ever. Classic Euro style, you know? Like you get off the mountain every day and look at this thing, and they're just like, yeah, hold on. Don't hit it yet. We got to get the kids to watch. You know? Like they don't care. They're just so amped. And I remember you went and hit that thing, and it was insane. And it's like if you're an ATV rider in Europe, I mean, I remember you went there, and back in the day, we used to call it the Alexei Vanyanin syndrome. When you do something too smooth, it makes it look easy. And I feel like, Worm, you were in that for a moment where you would do gnarly shit like that rail. No one wanted to touch it, and you hit it like nothing. And then it was like, damn, dude, like, made it look easy, you know?
Yeah, that rail was kind of harsh. That was probably me just trying to get something done, you know?
It was sick.
But that year was insane. And then I met Jason that year, which was huge because Jason's been a big influence in my life and snowboarding. He's a really great friend of mine since then. But we started going out to the zone in Champéry, and it's like I don't know.
La Zone?
La Zone. It's about an hour hike. And every day I was psyched for the hike because I'd get up there and Jason would just start talking. And he wouldn't stop until we got to the top. And through that whole hour, every day, I was getting the most insane stories I'd ever heard in my life firsthand. And I was just like so hooked. And yeah, it was a huge, huge influence. And it was so cool to be out there. And
I think that would be an interesting thing to talk about because a lot of the listeners might not understand the difference between, you know, you take North America, which backcountry is generally a snowmobile access mission. Then you go over to Europe and you get off a chairlift and then you freaking walk around.
Yeah, and you're hitting, I mean, we did a jump one year and we were using the rope tow to ride the jump. Like we'd hit the jump, get back on the rope tow, get to the top of the mountain and hit the jump again. So, I mean, Europe was insane. And then my second year for Absinthe, same thing. It was just like, dude, this opportunity is insane.
That's ever since.
First year was ever since.
Second year's after forever.
Yeah. And so, like I said, ever since I kind of jumped in after January 1st, Bodie got that call, went out there. He was doing real snow. Didn't tell me that his whole MO was like, I'm just going to be jumping off roofs and everything we're shoveling is going to be like 5-hour landings. But it was epic. And like, you know, watching Bodie do what Bodie does too. Like he was asking me like, why aren't you scared? Bodie's done the most insane things I've ever witnessed. Like I've never been more afraid for somebody's well-being watching them snowboard than when Bodie's trying to figure out one of his great tricks. And, you know, he asked me that question. Well, dude, watching you snowboard all these years probably helped me realize like, and Bodie and Jagger, they both taught me this thing, which was like, you can do 2 tricks, 3 tricks, 4 tricks that, okay, they're not your greatest tricks. You go to a spot and you need to get something, especially a backcountry jump. You got, 4 or 5 tries to land a trick. So it's like, do you want to try something new? Even if you get to a rail, you might get kicked out, you might get fucked up. And do you want to try something new? Well, those bangers matter so much more than 4 B shots. So definitely learned that from those guys. It was like, you know, instead of going out there and just trying to get snowboard clips, like wait, try to do the craziest thing you can do for yourself, and that's going to be 10 times over more powerful than it is just doing stuff that you're like, yeah, that was a sick front 3.
Mm-hmm. 1 banger's worth 10 fillers.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you were leading into, you were just about to get into going into the After Forever year. It's a 2-part fucking insane 2-song, 2-part. Half streets, half backcountry. Like you were on a freaking mission. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, this year for After Forever, it was lined up from the beginning. Like I'm gonna film for Absinthe, and that was a huge deal for me. Like watching those movies, Future Proof, Pop. They were like the most influential snowboard movies, and Billabong had a big deal with Absinthe for a long time. So it was kind of dangled over my head for a couple years. Like, oh, maybe you'll film for Absinthe, and then when it came to After Forever, it was like, okay, it's on. And I wanted to make the most of that. And we spent, maybe a month or 2 months here in Salt Lake and tried to film as much street as possible. That was with Butters, which was super fun. We had a bunch of different people. Jagger was out here, Kale Zima, Cont'd. We just had an epic crew. And then after that, same thing. I just took off to Europe. We had a huge Europe crew. We spent as much time as we could. I think me and you, Shane, we went back twice. And it was for 2 reasons. One, the snowboarding was insane, but then also you realize you have this opportunity to travel Europe. And I think like Shane is the same way as me. It's like, okay, part of this is we need to do our job and snowboard and get those shots. And the other part of it is like, this might not come around again. You better stop and enjoy a little cheese farm here and a dip in the lake there and like really take it in, because it was a super special opportunity and time in my life to just be out there and experience life.
Yeah, that was a really special time. And I feel like if you're a snowboard or a winter lover, the experience like we've been blessed to have, you go to Europe from Italy, France, Switzerland, Austria. These places are the epitome of winter living. Like you were saying, I mean, the off the hill is just as fun as the on the hill, And when we did go to Lago Maggiore, that was insane.
That was insane. And it's like a well-rounded experience out there for sure. And to talk, like, the crew we had that year was Dabari, Manuel, and Jason. Like, those were the people I was riding with. So that was insane, It was like, try to do your best. Never going to be as good as those guys, but try to keep up.
That was the year in Alanya?
Yep. Well, Jason did that huge gap down, and we did a bunch of stuff in Champéry. That was another thing. The cover of Absinthe that year was Manuel doing this crazy method, and that was in La Zone. And I remember Vladdy being like, "You guys can't build a hip there. It'll never work. It'll never work. It's never been done." And this time it actually worked out, and it was cover of Absinthe. So I finally got to be like, "Yeah, bitch, look at this."
That's incredible.
Okay, so going in, you're fired up. You seem like you just caught a momentum wave where everything was working from your street trips and then rolled it into the backcountry. I mean, I'd love to just talk about a couple specific tricks. Like your last 2 tricks, you do a giant backside 1080 and a giant frontside 1080, both monumental. Walk us through those.
Yeah, I think especially then, that was the time where I was like, all right, this is what I want to have in my part. I want to have the 270. I want to have the back 10. I want to have the front 10. So it was just trying to find those zones. And the back 10 was a battle for sure. But we throughout my snowboard career, like, I've never really had the time to build an insane jump. Like, I don't want to breezy out there for 30 hours on a jump. I want to go snowboard. So we kind of just throw things up, and that always makes it harder. But that's the sign of like a true snowboarder, like, and I learned that watching from Jason. Like, Jason won't build shit ever, and he'll just manage it. And so that was like, you don't have to build the craziest jump to get the craziest trick. But those 2, more Europe spots on the provisional control of Vladdy helping us out, and just trying to figure it out. And both sessions was with Sevi and Max, who were also crushing. I think Sevi did this crazy switchback 5, and then you just see that and you're like, all right, what am I going to do?
The one he did with the method?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was insane.
Legendary.
That whole session was insane. You Max and Sevi just went to town on that jump.
Yeah.
That was so sick.
I think that was maybe towards the end of the year, and we already had the repertoire from the year before. And that first year, I think we figured out a lot of stuff. And then the second year, it was a little bit more go time.
Oh, going back to Michigan, the follow cam on the roof.
Yeah.
That was always one of my favorites with you.
Thank you for that, Shane. I mean, that's another thing. You start to learn filming snowboarding, that it's part about the trick and it's part about the filming and everything else. And when it comes together and you actually work with a filmer to get this like insane thing, it's really special.
Yeah, that clip's, all time. You hit the box on the top and then pop off to the shed.
Yeah. Shout out to Bodie for having 2 ladders that year.
Yeah.
Big ladders. You're the roof spots back then. Now, with that, Absinthe, I never really partook except for the Salt Lake premieres, but you guys would get a fucking tour bus and cruise around, and I would just hear the war stories from you, Shane, and from Bodie about these wild premiere tours. Did you partake in those?
I did partake in those. So after Forever, I filmed a part that I was proud of, which always helps at the premiere for sure. And then Vladdy was doing the Absence Tour, which I think was 28 stops from all over Europe. And me and Vladdy were really good friends. And I was just like, I'm signing on. Another one of those things where you're like, when am I ever going to have the opportunity to ride a bus around the entire continent of Europe and party and watch the snowboard video over and over again? So I was the only person that year that stayed on for the full tour. Me and Vladdy did 28 stops in like 40 days on this fucking bus trip, and it was wild. But yeah, super excited. Like and now it doesn't happen anymore. I'm just like grateful that back then I had the sense to be like, yeah, this is something that I can't let get away from me because it ain't coming back.
It truly was legendary. I mean, what Brewsty and Vlad did with the tour over there, it's something that you wish for everybody that's succeeding right now. I mean, and you know, maybe premieres are coming back because there is a pretty extensive tour out there for some people, you know.
I'm curious, how did the body feel? Let's just say day 28, you know, last premiere, been putting yourself through hell and back. How's the chassis holding up at this point?
Wasn't doing so good. I had youth on my side for sure, but I was looking bloated. I was hurting. But you go through different phases, you know. It wasn't out of 10 at every premiere. You'd have to kind of pick and choose. But I remember we went to Sofia, Bulgaria, and we were in like the national theater there that sits like 600 people or something like that. And 600 people came out to watch this Absinthe video, and we're like on the mic, and it's just crazy experience. And even now, like being a little bit more involved in splitboarding and on all the rest, just to like think back on those experiences where there was 600 people in Bulgaria watching a snowboard video.
Well, and not to mention in Europe, the overall stoke level for premieres. You know, if 200 or 300 people come to a premiere in the U.S., we're pretty psyched. Over there, I mean, there could be 1,200 people.
Yeah.
You know, 800 people, and they're coming from so far away from the mountains because they're so amped, you know? So shout out to all those people because they really care about this stuff for sure.
Yeah.
And it's legendary that you went on that because I feel like the tour, once again, Brewsty and Vlad doing it year after year. For us, it was like you go on it and then it's like, oh, damn, now I know what it's like. So then in the next year, you're like, yeah, maybe I'll go. And then you know, I don't know if I'm going to go this year. So it's one of those things. I mean, people that go on tours, it really tells you a lot. Because if you did that all the time, like those bands that have been doing it for years.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I remember the driver saying one time, you know, you snowboarders are worse than the bands because you guys are partying every night. You're like celebrating every night. These people have chefs. They have trainers, you know?
Yeah,
that's how they maintain going on the tour. But are you still dating the same girl?
Yeah,
from the tour?
Met my girlfriend from the tour, from the Romania stop. And afterwards, the tour was done. We hung out for the night. We did a quick rip to Portugal. Then I flew to France, hung out with Sevi and this crazy all Dutch crew. None of them spoke one word of English. I was just completely on my own. And then after that, I went and hung out in Vladdy's house in Champéry and cat sit for him for like 2 weeks. Had his girlfriend's car, so I was just like a little Swiss immigrant for 2 weeks. It was pretty rad. But I mean, like that's, you know, talking back a little bit about getting out of the comfort zone and doing those things, it was like, you know, Vladdy's like, you want to cat sit for 2 weeks? And I'm like, yeah, I want to live in Europe in your house for 2 weeks. Like, when is this opportunity ever going to come back around? So I feel like through snowboarding, I've always tried to like understand that, you know, these things that we're doing is really special. And the more you say yes and do whatever you can to do out there, the more kind of meaningful a lot of this stuff is going to be.
Totally. You know, it's interesting thinking back on those times too, because I remember, I do feel like you were such a talented snowboarder that was doing the most insane stuff on your snowboard, filming this what could have easily been Ender in that video, like 2-part just opus of a video part. But it did seem like the brands lacked support for your snowboarding. It didn't seem like the level of riding matched the support you were getting. From my perspective, I always felt that way. And then, you know, even fast forwarding doing this show, when we always ask people, who's the most underrated? Who's the most underrated? Like, your name is probably the most frequent as, you know, underrated snowboarder. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, Yeah, I'm psyched. I'd rather have a brand new truck, but if I can be the most underrated snowboarder, at least I'm doing something, And I don't know. I think it's the thing you can't do is be bitter, and you can't compare yourself to other situations like what other people are going on, and a lot of people in snowboarding got bitter and kind of got turned off because they lost that support. But look at everything we've talked about, like how fortunate I was to spend time with such great people in such amazing places. And I think that's the glory in it.
Love it. That's fantastic. So would you rather be the overrated snowboarder with the brand new truck or?
Yeah, I'd rather be the most overrated snowboarder that everybody's talking shit on, driving a brand new Tacoma with this 2022 Skidoo in the back. But you know what? This tent on the side of the road in Alaska will do just fine. And there's something important when you roll up into those scenes and you're the underdog, people get behind you a little bit. And we had that this year in Alaska. I mean, people were stopping, dropping off king salmon and king crab for us on the side of the road. It was pretty special. And I don't think that would have happened if we had, that doesn't happen when you're staying in a nice place in the town of Haines. That happens when you put yourself out there a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So rad.
That's fantastic. Well, the next year you filmed for Pepper. We got to film together. It was a fun freaking winter, dude.
That was a fun winter. And I recently was thinking about this because I've never watched football a day in my life. It's just not something I grew up with. But I was watching the quarterback show on Netflix, which was pretty good. And it dawned on me right then. I was like, you know what? Chris was the quarterback of Pepper because no one worked harder. And everybody was out there to do their tricks, but at the end of the day, Chris would us outside of the van with the Timbits, his shovel for every single person. Like you put in the time, and to see that, I mean, it's kind of coming full circle with what you're doing now for snowboarding. But just to now I reflect back on that, and I think you were one of the most supportive, awesome people to be out there with, and we all benefited from that a lot. So
I appreciate that. I thought you, myself, Ozzy, all had a very similar mindset when it came to filming and gassing each other up big time.
Yeah, I think we had a lot more cohesiveness in Pepper than I had ever had before, where it was like we're all in the project, and if somebody gets a good shot, we all succeed. Well, let's make the best movie possible. And we also were a pretty tight-knit crew. It was like Ted was in there, and Chip was there, and
Bodie was going nuts.
Bodie was going nuts, but we all had a lot of respect for each other, and that was an epic year. Especially the trip to Quebec, I think, is the standout trip for me. It's crazy. It was a rail trip, but yeah, I mean, we just had so much fun and so much stuff went down. And it's cool being with a diverse crew of snowboarders because everybody looks at spots differently. Everybody finds out what they want to do, and figuring out what is unique to you is pretty cool.
Yeah, you think about that one particular spot where you did a line where you did board slide this thing and then gap lip slide. Ted did 50-50 drop to board slide on the same rail. And then I did gap cab 2 and Ozzy did gap switchback lip. And so we went to this one spot and all four of us got pretty different tricks on it and wrote it in different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a testament to what I was saying earlier is you figure out what speaks to you. And, a part is a little look into the way that you snowboard. And so it's cool to figure out those spots that reflect all right, this is something I want to do.
Cool. Yeah, that was a fun winter, man. I had a lot of fun riding with you in the backcountry too. That was I feel like your mentality before you fucking drop in is so funny. You're you've been with Worm on the top of the jump. You shuttle him to the top. You're about to drop in. He's doing his thing. He's talking shit to you on the run in, looking back. I have clips on my phone where you're chirping to me as you're dropping in to a cheese wedge. You just have this very spontaneous way about the way you ride that I really had a lot of fun that winter.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, I don't think it does you any good to stress out. At a certain point, you got to realize that you're committed to what you're doing. And I mean, I learned that a lot splitboarding, but once I'll take us on a little side street here, but I always when you're at the bottom of face, you're looking up at a line and you're going I'm going to ride this, and you get up there and it's always scary. Every single time you get up there and you're what the fuck did I choose? And at that moment I said, you know what? The Garrett at the bottom knew what he was doing. He picked this line for a reason. I was there. I liked it. So just believe in the bottom, Garrett, because the top Garrett ain't got nothing for you right now.
Trust Garrett at the bottom of the line.
Yeah.
That Garrett knows.
Yeah.
He knows.
Well, you got to know. And at some point, you know, when you're committed to something, it doesn't matter. You're just going to do it at some point. So you got to just do it.
But the best part of the whole thing is filming with you is no matter what the fuck you're doing, whether it's the scariest thing in the world, the chillest line, you're doing it with a smile on your face.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I mean, that's cool that I'm hearing a lot of great things. So it's great. We all struggle in our own ways out there. But yeah, I mean, like I've been kind of saying a lot, it's like the snowboarding tricks are only part of it. And you got to realize what we're doing is pretty special and try to make the most out of it regardless. And, you know, right now I feel like I'm more motivated in my snowboard career than ever. And some days are definitely hard because, like you said, with the underrated thing, it's like I haven't done the best snowboarding that I know I can do. And after leaving Absinthe, it's been hard to just find myself in the right position at the right time. And a lot of things have got to line up. And, you know, like you were saying about Vladdy, he was taking me to the best spots in the best place to go in Europe and facilitating just like greatness, because it's really hard to put yourself in those positions where you can do the best snowboarding. You know, you need all those conditions to line up. So it's pretty special when it happens. And now I'm looking to make that happen again for sure.
Well, it's great that you're continuing that group dynamics, because what you guys did in Alaska, you and Inyo, I mean, when you're describing one of you guys rides down, then turns around, films the other one, come down, whatever. It's that whole process is incredible.
Yeah, and being with somebody that you trust and respect in the mountains is huge. And me and Inyo have a good thing going on. Like when one of us is up, the other one's a little down. When one of us is full balls to the wall, the other one's a little bit timid usually, and that flips depending on the day. So it's a good balance. And yeah, it's been good. I mean, we stayed in a tent on the side of the road for 40 days, so we had our moments for sure. But we're still friends. We're going to do it next year, and that's what matters. And I mean, like, all the relationships that I've had with, like, great friends and stuff, they brotherly relationships kind of, you know. They you have your fights and this and that, but it's all in good faith.
Well, talking about brotherly relationships, it could be a good time to talk about Jaeger Bailey. Passed away. Dear friend of yours, what type of impact did he have on your life?
Well, definitely still impacting my life. That's a super crazy thing, and definitely a lot of trauma. I mean, that was a really hard pill to swallow, and still trying to deal with that now. But it's he had a big impact on a lot of people, and I think what you guys will remember is same as me, is like he was always super stoked and super excited. And I think when that went down, I just felt a lot of blame. You know, there was a lot of situations where you maybe don't, at the time, you think you're doing the right thing. I remember one time I went over to his house and I parked his car in, and I just like wouldn't let him leave because he was all messed up. And I remember just like parking him in and being like, dude, the only way you're getting in your car to drive right now is if you punch me in the face and you take the keys. And eventually I got him inside and calmed him down and everything. And then I didn't really want to like spread bad things. You don't want to go around telling people what happened, because you have respect for that person and you want them to be able to live those things on their own. And then when that happened, I just felt so much guilt and shame. And, you know, it hurts because it feels like you could have done something about it. And at the same time, it hurts because you have this great friend and you realize that they didn't have the opportunity to come and talk to you about something. And it just like pretty heart-wrenching. So I've just been trying to learn from that and not take the blame on myself, because if something happens to somebody else, you could never put yourself in the position to be like, that was my fault. So trying to learn through that. And I mean, he had a huge relationship. I want to take it back to the first time I met him. I was actually living in Mammoth, and I did some sort of contest, which was a video entry contest, and I got to go to the shakedown at Snoqualmie. And I don't know how I met Jaeger, but I met him up in the parking lot, and he was with his buddy brother Jay, which is homie back from Chihuahua, where Jaeger's from. And they didn't have a place to stay, classic, and this contest had a hotel room for me. So I was like, yeah, for sure, you guys can stay. And then he lost his keys to his car, which is like another classic thing. I mean, Jaeger never had his shit together. We like roll up to Baker parking lot. He's like, fuck, where's my jacket? Like, dude, come on. But going down, I remember I was watching that footage in the hotel room because he had his little part, and I was with one of those songs, I forget, but it was like that happy song. And I just remember seeing what he was doing and being so blown away. And I think, yeah, it's tough because, yeah, I think it was just a difficult place, and small towns can be difficult, and, you know, being successful on the internet can be difficult. And I think a lot of those things, you know, funneled into what was happening, and yeah.
Special dude.
Special dude, yeah. I think we all have a lot of positive memories, and one thing I definitely know is, like, I don't want to shy away from talking about it and bringing him up, because I think that does his memory a dishonor, and I think it's rad to keep these stories alive. And I mean, we remember that day he did the back rodeo here. That was epic, sure. And his snowboarding was insane, and he was definitely the one to teach me, like, you know, do the best trick you can. Don't go for fillers. And beyond that, just, like, you know, is a great friend. We had a lot of internal fights, because he was a hard person to be a friend with for a lot of times too. But, you know, everybody that ever had a small quarrel, a small fight, whatever, when some shit goes down, you realize that nothing like that was important, and it really puts things in perspective. So I think this is something that, for me, I'm still trying to work through, still trying to deal. I know a lot of people say, like, oh, you got to process it. And, you know, when you lose somebody like that, I don't know if you can necessarily process it. It's just you have to keep living life. And every day that you live, it gets a little bit easier to deal with that situation. And, you know, I think another thing that happened is I put myself in that situation where nobody knows the pain that I'm feeling, because you want to be upset. And being upset also is, like, a way to honor your friend. You're like, how could I be happy right now with what just happened? And at some point, I started to realize, you know, you can't take that on yourself. You can't just keep being mad because you think that it's, you know, you're being a good friend for being upset. You gotta keep moving and honor the positivity that was there. And yeah, I think everybody that got to hang out with Jaeger will have something positive to say. So that's an important thing.
I love also the inspiration pulled from snowboarding with Jaeger, the fucking it's happening no matter what. You're riding Mammoth Main Park, you're riding whatever with him, and you could literally throw out, like, what do you think about doing a double back on that? He's like, yeah, fuck, all right, I'll do it. Yeah, and then you could really, it didn't matter no matter when he was strapping in, if he was pointing his snowboard towards something, he was putting his whole being into the jump, the rail, whatever it is. And I think that that's inspiring. And then you can also look at it and be like, okay, what would this homie want? What would he want to see? He'd want to see Worm go fucking switchback roadie 5 on the step down. You know?
Yeah, you got to do it, man. So I remember one time I went up to Jaeger's house. This was on our way up to Nelson to go film with Justin. This was the After Forever year. And he had this whole closet full in his grandparents' house of just swag, like from Vulcan peanut butter rail jams and shit that he had never touched. It's like his holy closet of, like, shitty swag.
That's amazing.
And there was this shitty green hat there, and I was like, dude, I'm taking this green hat. Like, I'm taking something from this closet. And he did not want to part with any of his fucking swag.
That's awesome.
And he's like, I'll give you that hat if you get a shot in it. So I ended up getting a shot in it. It's in After Forever. It's in Nelson. A sweet shot that I'm still stoked on. But then I still had that hat, and after he passed, I wore it, like, every single day, and just tried to harness that energy. And you know, out of everything negative, at some point you gotta get out of that mindset and look for whatever shimmer of light you can.
You mentioned getting a shot in Nelson. We have a good segue into a question from Justin Hosnick that kind of pertains to that. Here we go.
Hey, Worm, Justin here. Hyped that you're in the booth today. Yeah, I've got some vivid, beautiful memories of when you came up and we filmed around Nelson, in the streets of Nelson, and we ended up getting the keys to the city for a few weeks. And then that turned into getting the keys to the castle for a very special day on January 20th. I would love to hear your memories from that experience. Right on.
Yeah, Justin. I think this goes back to what I was talking a little bit. Like, Justin's a really good friend of mine now, and Shane as well, and you. And, that's like the most important thing after all these years. And I think being there for each other, being in a place where you're stoked to watch other people land tricks has helped, like, keep my relationship alive with these people that I care about a lot. So that's super important. But let's hop into that question, Justin. So, Nelson, Justin got the keys from the town because he's pretty good at weaseling some things sometimes, And we went and hit the Gigi spot, which there's this old shot of Gigi jibbing through the streets of Nelson. And it was me, Austin, and Jagger. We got the keys to the city, and we were pretty much allowed to do whatever we want, except what we weren't allowed to do. But they were pretty cool with us. And we set up the Gigi spot, which was pretty monumental because it was a Gigi street spot. And we all seshed that, and we got some sweet lines through the town of Nelson. Super rad, and Austin and Jagger are both like balls of energy, so it was a super rad crew to be on. And then after that, it was Craig Kelly Day. That's the day that Hassanik's talking about. And there was a wisp in the air that we were going to be invited up to Baldface, which was pretty insane. I'd never gone up there. And it all came to fruition. We took the boat across, me, Austin, and Justin. And then we took the freaking car up to the snowmobile, the whole 9 yards. We went up there. I think we stayed in the Craig Kelly room too, which was super special. And then the next day they have that big Craig Kelly cross up there. And Pinciero was up there with fireworks and a bottle of whiskey, and we built this jump over the cross. And I think I did a couple Miller flips, and Sweden did a couple Miller flips over that. But sun was shining through, Craig Kelly Day, jibbing the cross, and it was like definitely special as far as like a moment in snowboarding for me, honoring what had happened and just being able to go to Baldface and experience that, and being with Justin and everything was super special.
That's magical.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
The cover of the movie that year, Sweden. Yeah, super
And
sick.
it's also it's flat up there. Did you guys sled toe into that?
I think we sled toed into that. Yeah, as far as I can remember, it wasn't a cat toe.
Yeah. Snowcat toe. I think I got the speed.
Yeah, maybe a little slow.
And there was like the magical kind of, what do you call it, lens flare going on, where there was like a sunset. It was fucking gorgeous, huh?
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And Dustin Lalick was up there, who's still a friend of mine who lives in Nelson. So it was rad. And yeah, now I'm up in Nelson myself. I've been there for 3 years. So everything that I'd filmed, like, that spot I was telling you with the green hat, I get to drive by that all the time, and the Gigi spot. And I just got a lot of good memories just from what we had done there that year.
Cool. I want to talk about the kind of timeline here, because it's interesting. You filmed those absinthe parts that we talked about. Then you filmed Pepper. Then there was that melodrama year. And then it seemed like from there, that kind of the moment when you started to change your perspective or your goals in snowboarding?
I don't think that was, well, what had happened was that I just kind of got sick of people not being fired up with the opportunities that we had. Like, it was just so amazing, and I just didn't want, I just felt like if you weren't excited for what we were being able to do out there, regardless of the trick that you got, it was just doing a little bit of a disservice to how lucky and fortunate we were to be best of friends, hanging out in the mountains all day long, doing the thing we were doing when we were kids, like that's huge. And so when I switched, I did melodrama, and then I wanted to do my own project, which I did with Tenderfoot. And I just wanted to focus on some of the people that I had met along the way that had influenced me and kind of stood out. So first episode was with Jason, and then did an episode with Manuel down in Chile, and just some of the people that I wanted to showcase. And I was super lucky that both of those guys were great friends of mine, and they were down to do something with me. And it was fun. It was a really cool year, and did something different. And that was just like the eye-opening thing of realizing, now that I don't have Vladdy and Justin and Shane, it's like, how the fuck am I going to get to the best snow on the best days and get these shots? Because with absinthe, you get put in those positions to get bangers, and the last thing you got to do is show up and do your snowboarding. But when you're calling the shots yourself, you're looking at a weather map, and you're like, okay, where do I go? Where do I go when I get there? And there's a lot of things to figure out. So that's been.
What's up with the name Tenderfoot?
I just thought it was cool. It was like for a novice, like Tenderfoot was like someone new in the area. So I thought that kind of worked because it was something brand new for me.
Cool. I like it. So you did Tenderfoot, and then the next year you did Corbett's.
Yeah, well, that was just my first year on Jones. That was also the first year of COVID. So things were a little bit different for sure. And we filmed a full part with Jones, but that year was the first year I had been splitboarding. We're out in Jackson Hole, which was super cool. I went out with this dude, Clark and Murph, who are legendary guides out there, and started to get a little bit more experience. We went out to the Teton National Park, and we did this huge day, and I remember we walked by this insane pillow field, and the next day I was like, dude, why don't we just go back to the pillow field? And Clark's like, nobody rides there. Like, everybody just splitboards past there. So we splitboard out to this insane pillow field that's like the first thing you see in Teton Park, and like nobody had ridden it. And I was like, okay, so there's a lot of zones out there that maybe, you know, aren't necessarily what splitboarders want to ride, but if you get yourself there, there's like some pretty unique terrain that nobody's got to mess around on, and it's only a hop and a step away. And like, you know, Jackson, everything that snowmobile access has been shredded a million times before, and to go out there and to see these zones that, you know, had been not really snowboard documented before was pretty eye-opening.
So talking about COVID, Hosnick mentioned that you guys had a pretty special experience during lockdown where you guys were just kind of cruising around the mountain, no camera, keeping it pretty light, but having some pretty magical days.
Yeah, we had some magical times. So I think this is actually the next year, because COVID was kind of a whole thing. And I went up to Nelson. It's the year Jagger had passed, and I was definitely just super lost. And I had a lot of grief and a lot of energy, and I just needed to funnel it into snowboarding. And that felt like the only outlet or escape that I had at that moment. That was my green hat year. And Justin was doing his thing. He was super nice. I was like, yeah, just come up here and hang. And we had a super rad crew. We had some super amazing times. And then I ran into a tree at Whitewater, and I busted my foot, and I couldn't snowboard. And I remember just life ended because that was my escape. That was my outlet, and I couldn't snowboard anymore. And I just was super, super lost and didn't know where to put my energy or put all that stuff that was inside me. But I decided to stay up there because it was Nico was up there. Justin was hanging out with Jamie Lynn a bunch, and I could kind of snowmobile a bit, but I couldn't snowboard. And I was like, yeah, I'll just hang around and snowmobile and go out with Jamie and Nico and these guys and just, you know, do it for the fun. So we did that for the rest of the year. We had some super epic times, just me and Hosnick doubling snowmobiles, laughing for hours. Like one time we were on this rental sled that broke, so you had to ride it full pin, and we were doubling, and it was like hours of laughing, just smashing these banks full pin, out of control. And then I remember like...
Wait, hold on. I need to explain. So you turn the sled on, and it's immediately wide open.
It will die if you're not wide open. So we get way out there. We're like probably a couple scoops deep. We get way out there, and I remember on the way back, Justin's like, you want to ride with Jamie? And I was all, fucking, what? He's like, yeah, you got to hop on with Jamie. And I just met Jamie, and he's wearing like a leather jacket. And he's all like, don't let your shoulder get away from me. And we're just doing like, you know, way too fast back. And that was like my first time hanging out with Jamie. And I'm hanging onto the sled just like, holy shit, dude, don't fuck this up. And then COVID broke out, and they're like, you can't get back across the border. And I'm like, you guys mind? And they're like, no, please. So I just stayed up there for a few months and hung out with Kate and Cassius and Justin, and we had a good time. And we didn't do too much because things were on lockdown, but we just got to explore the area and have a pretty special few months just being with each other and going through the stuff.
And I'm in a little dual citizen sandwich, right? That's how you're able to stay up there?
Yes.
That's how it works. Yeah.
That's how it works. A couple of dualies over here.
It's true.
But
fantastic.
But actually, was it the next year with Space Cadet that we linked up with you?
Yeah, that was the year after, because that video was Channel Zero, which I think was kind of the last Absinthe film. Yep. I shared a little part with Hans and my buddy Johan. Yep. And then the next year, was your guys' Space Cadet year, and we got to hang a little bit in
Which
Golden.
I distinctly remember you were shredding that Jones board, that directional board.
Yeah.
But you were going like switch off of all this stuff, and it was insane.
Yeah, the hovercraft. The hovercraft is so sick. You know, the first time I ever rode the hovercraft was with you on a trip to Europe. You had one, but you're goofy and I'm regular. And we traded boards, and I was set up like posy switch. And I remember switch carving down the mountain, and it was so insane. And then getting on that hovercraft has been like life changing, because that's just like the sickest snowboard ever built. And once I rode it, I didn't want to stop riding it. Same time, I didn't want to be like totally limited to just doing 360s and 720s. So I was trying to figure it out, but definitely landing switch in powder with that board is not the easiest thing to do. I've tried it a lot.
I remember you doing it though. Ripping it. That was sick.
Yeah, it was fun.
And by the way, I'm regular as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. When he said you're goofy, I was like, I don't know if that's true.
No, but have you ever, I don't know if you guys have stances like that, but people that are regular, but you look at their setup and it looks like it's more directional goofy.
Maybe your bindings were backwards.
Yeah, maybe my bindings were just, I just really like to come at it, with my shoulder.
Yeah, keep your shoulders back for when you spin front side. So you don't pre-spin.
No, but I remember because there's some clips of Worm on the hovercraft going off, like doing chicanes and stuff off of these sick drops when we were up in, is it East Revy?
Yeah, and if you got a little bit of an in-run, it goes. It's just the landing switch that becomes a little bit tough on that thing.
Question, we didn't talk about this. You rode for Capita in your formative years and then switched to Jones. How did that come to be?
Well, I rode for Capita, did the After Forever thing, and I've been riding for Capita for a while. Started like way back in Super Park. We won the Super Park one year, went to Mexico, and basically what happened is I was getting like $3,000 support, and then they're just like, they didn't have it in there. But, I'd been to quite a few dinners and stuff that cost $3,000, and I was like, you know what? Why don't you write everybody on the team and ask them, should we have a team dinner or should we keep Worm on? Like, see what they say, And it just wasn't there. So I was like, all right, I just don't want to do it for free. Not because I think, like, everything we get's a blessing. But at some point, I wanted to say, like, I'm worth $3,000. I'm out here filming video parts, and if that's not coming, I'll just go and work for a couple months and make that $3,000 somewhere else. It's not unobtainable. And then I was kind of in limbo land for a while, and you actually floated me a couple 6-pieces, which were super dope. Psyched to be on the Chris Grandi's model. And then Jones was natural because I'd met Miller on some trips to Europe, who's the staff photog. And then Greg is the videographer, and they're both in Mammoth and both good friends of mine. So at some point, things were just lining up, and Greg was the team manager for a year, was able to put me on. And then from there, it's just been a super solid fit. And getting to meet the Jones guys, it's been super eye-opening. And kind of the whole program they have over there is really special.
Is it competitive if you do more than a 360?
No, it's not.
Does anyone get nervous?
Nobody else is doing the 360s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No.
They're like, damn, Worm, settle down,
Yeah, no, Jeremy's so sick. I remember like when we went on that trip to the Sierras on the way down, I was like, we went splitboarding, but we went to this zone that had all of the most perfect landings, and I'd never seen that in the Eastern Sierras, and in Bishop was there, and on the way down, I was finally like, dude, I got to hit one of these, and we're all beat after 4 days of camping, and I'm like, you guys can all go back to the car. Jer, you do not have to stay up here, but I got to hit this thing. And I built this little side hit and was hitting this thing. And he was just so fired up on that. He's like, dude, thank you so much for like stopping and doing it. He's like, everybody says they're going to do it. Nobody does it. Meanwhile, I'm like shitting my pants. I'm like, Jeremy, just go back to the car if you don't want to be up here. Like there's no pressure,
That's awesome.
But yeah. And the whole crew, like I've been super fortunate to learn from a bunch of the guys who are guides and super solid backcountry riders. And it's been a really exciting part of my journey. Just finding splitboarding has helped me like kind of have a different appreciation for the mountains and kind of fall in love with it again. And the amount of time you're able to spend out there, it's just like so special. You get to these valleys and these zones and you're there for hours and it's like last light and you're splitboarding out and you're just looking over your shoulder and you're like, I don't want to go, dude. Look at this place. It's so special.
So cool, because the reoccurring theme you're telling us is everyone walks by the stuff that you are stopping and treading.
So I just learned, so you can actually freestyle on a splitboard. I didn't know.
In ski mode. Yeah.
You don't just have to wiggle. No,
but like that story of the pillows and up in the Tetons, that stuff is so cool because it seems like most people in the world now want to get to the, A to B, and then they don't see anything in between. So it's rad that you are the one that is stopping and shredding those things.
Yeah, and I think that was maybe not a conscious effort, but like a lot of splitboarders just want to go from A to B as fast as possible. And the snowboarding is not secondary, but kind of secondary, you know. It's all about doing it, the biggest mission or this and that. And I was like, you know, I think there's a different avenue in splitboarding that's kind of like freestyle splitboarding and being psyched on hitting the best shot and maybe not going out and crushing the most vertical in a day, but finding stuff that nobody else has rode before, finding stuff that's brand new and getting to ride that and figure out that terrain. And also, like, not to mention all the places that you get to go that maybe you couldn't go on a snowmobile or something.
I love it. I think this is also making me think too when we're talking about tricks that the first splitboard double cork, like official double cork, has not happened yet, right?
I don't think so. If it has, it was probably Matt Scher in Europe, but I don't know if I've seen one. I've tried it twice now, but both times were on these super shitty jumps that we built from like noon to 1, and then we had 4 hours to hit it. So that's definitely on the list. It's just not high enough on the list to be like, let's go build a jump on our splitboards.
Do you remember like the race to the first kickflip on a surfboard? Like that was the thing. Like people are like, who's gonna kickflip a surfboard? Volcom put up some money or something, right?
Yeah, and then that one guy did it, but I think like didn't think about anything else but that.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
I'm just gonna go on record right now and say the first splitboard double cork that gets done, I will personally weld a trophy and send it to whoever does it. And I want to say it can't be like a double underflip 900 or like a double backflip 180. Like I'm talking back 10 double, front 10 double, proper double cork. First person to do one, I'm going to send a trophy to.
I want that trophy.
I want to send it to you.
Actually, that'd be an
like
insane event if you started like a splitboard freestyle event where you go up and then you have to, you know, who does the best trick. Oh, man, you know.
Slope style comp, but you got a splitboard at the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Level the playing field a little bit.
Yep.
That's what I was thinking. If I ever go natural selection, I'm just going to splitboard at the top. Fuck it.
I
Just
mean,
write up all the landings too. Just kind of.
But the thing is with the splitboard double cork is it can't be contrived. You can't just go to the gulch and where you could walk easily with verts and do it on a splitboard because it's a splitboard. You know, it's got to make sense. Like you got to be somewhere where it makes sense. You know, out and either you find this feature that's too good not to do a double cork, or for some reason you got to build a jump. Like all the days that I've built a jump, we've gone out splitboarding trying to ride lines, and the snow is just not working, or you just can't find, you know, a consistent face that's going to have 1,000 vertical feet of good snow. So you find a pocket and you're like, well, we could do nothing today, or we could put up this wedge. And that's like another thing with snowboarding is it's like, I always just want to snowboard. I want to just snowboard. And so whatever it is that's there, I want to snowboard on it. And snowboarding is the most fun thing. So let's board. And wherever there's a little patch of good snow, let's make the most of it.
Damn, I love
that's
it.
rad.
Also going to put in an asterisk, can't be on a park jump, even though that would be very impressive. Can't be on a park jump.
Well, and obviously you're going to get more points if you hit it on a natty feature, right?
Yeah, the natty splitboard double. Maybe next year.
Wind lips, hips, they exist.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you that I mean, when people ask me, you know, what's your favorite place to ride in the world? It's always weird to me because it takes away from the beauty of each of the places. But when you are like, when you're obviously, you know, developing that relationship in Haines and whatnot, are there other places in the world that you haven't been that you want to get to?
Definitely a lot of places that I think would be amazing to check out. Just like, you know, there's so many remote places out there that really haven't been tapped into. And I think splitboarding is the way to access them. But right now, full sights are set on AK. Just seeing what's possible out there, and then you see the mountains and the snowpack, and I don't think there's another place in the world where you get the stability and the steepness combined. And so this next year, I'm like I'm going to be in Alaska for 2 months, like got the bug, and I just think that's where you gotta be to ride some of this stuff.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and talk to you about Herschel Supply Company. Now, Herschel makes some of the sickest bags I've ever seen. Me and Chris were going on a little bomb hole trip a while ago, and Herschel sent us a couple bags to make the travels easier, and they worked All the stuff fit great. They were the perfect size. They looked so sick. You should have seen everybody in the airport. We were getting side-eyed because the bags just look so good. When I went on the website to check them out, they have an insane amount of colorways. They don't just make bags. They do laptop cases. They do backpacks. They do roller size bags. They do carry-on size, duffel bag, big duffel bag. They got every size you need for any situation you're going to find yourself in if you need to move some stuff around. So if you got some items and you need to put them in a bag, put them in a Herschel bag. It's simple.
All right, let's take a quick break and talk about Yeti. They got a new cooler. It's called the Roadie 15, and it's perfect for all of your essentials. You can throw it on the front of an ATV, throw it on your paddleboard or a kayak. It's also really light. You can carry it down to your beach, or you can go fishing with it. Great cooler, weighs less than 10 pounds empty. There's also ample space to fit a 12-pack of standard cans with ice. So those bevs stay cold wherever your adventure takes you. They got all types of technology in this thing too. They got the new double-duty strap, which means you don't need to use your hands. You can throw it over your shoulder. They got good handles. They got the non-slip feet for the back of your truck. They got a drain plug if you want to hose the thing out if it gets nasty. They got tie-down slots. And the best thing about the Yetis is the permafrost insulation. So they're the best coolers. They keep those bevs ice cold on a hot summer day. Check out their website if you want to learn more about the Yeti Roadie 15. I'll tell you what, I'm fired up about this splitboard double cork situation. We'll have more details to come. I just decided we're going to do it. But Shane, I've heard you talk about a pretty fantastic idea for an event.
Yeah, well, we've talked about for years, and Worm was touching on it, just enjoying the privilege and the blessing of being in the places we are. It'd just be really funny to take that to an event, because we've been up on the mountains, like on the top of Brighton. You're sitting there, you see these guys come up and they're just like splitboarding so hard to get up there, and they see you and they're ripping off skins to beat you. But meanwhile, we've been up there for like 45 minutes, bullshitting and eating, whatever. And so many times we're like, damn, like Buddy didn't even look around. Like he just ripped them off and was out. So it'd be really funny to do an event where you don't tell everyone, but the person who spends the most time at the top ends up winning, And I feel like that would be just hilarious, because nowadays everyone's in such a rush, and it's the A to B people we were talking about. They don't even take the time. I mean, when we were up in East Revy that one time, everyone was like, oh man, nobody stops to go to these pillows. And everybody has driven by these things for years. I mean, Craven's done everything, so he's probably, done that. But we spent like a month going halfway up the mountain and then riding and shooting all the pillows. So I'm just saying, an event where you just, don't tell everyone, but whoever enjoys the top ends up winning.
I like that.
Oh, that's the thing of splitboarding I cued into pretty quick, is there's not another splitboarder out there that's looking at the mountains the same way I am. So once I leave the parking lot, I got full reign of, everybody's going to walk by the things that I'm like, holy smokes, look at that. A lot of options for possibilities.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Get a Natty Select invite, ride it on the Splitty.
Yeah, for sure.
Go right up to landings. That's great. Maybe next year we'll do Bomb Hole Cup, Rail Jam, splitboard only.
Yep. Splitboard division. I like that.
Yep.
And you got to change over every time you want to hike back up.
That's incredible.
Rail Jams, we're going for 45. He's got 4 hits so far on the rail.
Not even.
Yeah, not even.
But it's timed on the way up.
But
as well.
That's when you got to go hard boots on him.
Yeah, that's where I draw the line.
That's where you draw the line. Yeah, what's your take on hard boots?
Some people ride them. Clark is a sick hard booter, and I seen him do some sweet tricks on hard boots, and I get it. But I'm there to snowboard, so I won't partake.
I wonder how the verts do in those hard boots.
Is there a hard booter?
That's the whole thing. Is a lot of people go hard boots for obviously ski mode, but also because of the crampon situation. Okay. A lot of people don't have soft boots and crampons is kind of a nightmare. And actually on the Jeremy boot, there's like a little hook on the back so the crampon sticks on there. But if you're jamming tough with crampons, soft boots are not the way to go. But the thing is, if you're jamming tough with crampons, what are you going to snowboard down? It's probably going to be pretty icy.
Mm-hmm. Good point. That's a good point. You know,
You know what the old school guys would say about that? Just have a few more layers of duct tape. You know?
Yeah.
And then your boots get harder.
I love that. Now, Silk, do you have any idea what part of the show it is?
I think it might be time for Name That Video part.
Beautifully done.
Well, hold on, guys. Before we get into Name That Video part, we actually have a presenting sponsor, Turtlebox. They're back delivering the best sounding, most durable portable speakers available. And I actually have the Gen 2 portable speaker right here. We got the white one. And just look at this thing. It's beautiful. We got the Bombhole logo on the back. And you might not be able to get the Bombhole logo on yours, but you actually can customize it. I was checking out their website. They got tons of colors. You can customize the front and the back and the handle to make yours look unique. Turtlebox Gen 2 portable speaker is 100% waterproof and boasts best-in-class audio quality. It's got over 20 hours of playtime. That is nearly the entire day. As a plus, you can pair multiple Turtlebox speakers together at the same time for a true A/B surround sound audio experience. Simply put, the Turtlebox is an extremely fun product designed for days on the mountain, on the water, in the backyard, and everywhere in between. So definitely go check out Turtlebox. Get your eyes on the Gen 2 portable speaker, and let's get into Name That Video part.
How you feeling?
A little bit of pressure. I'm just hoping it's from the golden era of snowboard videos.
Well, let's see how you do. I selected 2 because I know that you're a student of the game.
Okay.
First one's a bit of a meatball. I think we'll all get this one, but maybe you won't. Maybe you'll grenade. Maybe this will be really bad for your career. Here we go.
Could be. Bodie.
Sorry. I'm sorry. That one was
That
too
was way
obvious.
too fast.
That was stupid.
Yeah.
I'm stupid.
Yep.
Okay, this one's a little more tricky. See how the kid does.
I want to shout every day, 'cause you stole my heart away.
Wow.
Do you need it again?
No,
It's in there, dude. I know it's in there. Let's pull it out. Let's pull it out of that brain.
Is it a deja vu movie?
No, it's not deja vu. The person may be Canadian, allegedly. Just listen for a second. Soak it in.
I want to shout every day, 'cause you stole my heart away.
Shane, you know this one?
I don't.
You know this one.
No.
You know this one. I may be in this movie, allegedly, and you may have brought it up.
Oh, is this a Get Real part right there? Oh, it's totally coming back to me. So Get Real. Let's see. Who could be? It's not Jed. It's not you.
It's not me.
It's not you. It's not Jed. I know he's got that ender with the sad song thing going on. Who else is even in that video?
You might want to rethink that last statement.
It's Jed.
Yeah.
Great answer. Great answer.
Got it.
We got you there. Yeah, Canadian for sure. Shout out Canada.
Yep. Congratulations. You won yourself a prize pack. We got some stickers, beanies. We got some new hoodies that are kind of fresh.
Fired up, guys.
You can put your gear in there. You can bring that to Alaska on your bike for 40 days.
This is actually what I had on the back of my bike.
Yep. Perfect.
Nice.
You're dialed in.
Hey, great guess.
Thank you. I got Get Real. We got that out of there for sure.
Yeah.
I thought, you know what?
You know
I got
what?
confused with Shout at because Shoot the Moon. Jed's got that ender with the
Mazzy Star.
Mazzy Star exactly, and I
Yeah, you cross
You know what
pollinated.
threw me off was the statement he might be Canadian.
yeah.
Because it seems like he's very Canadian.
Well, let's not have Chris give it to us. The Bodie one was pretty.
The Bodie, you got one. You got one. You technically won.
Okay.
And then
I'll take it.
I'm not gonna lie, you kind of grenaded.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
And that part was a mixed part. It wasn't full rails. He went ATV that year. He was out in Wiss.
Front 7 to cheese wedges.
Yeah. Probably was driving a truck with a sled in the back, the whole 9 yards.
He was hilarious in the backcountry. So not dialed in. It was insane. Now, actually, the front 7 was in Cook City. Now that I think about it. Okay. Part 2 of Name That Video parts for our listeners. If you know the song, comment on the photo of Worm on our Instagram. That's where we pick our winner. We need video and rider. Here we go. Okay. Thank you guys for playing. Name That Video part. So you rode for Billabong forever. What happened with that?
Yeah, that was a long time thing going on, which was super rad because some of the first trips I got to go on was with Billabong. Andrew Mariner was the TM there, and he took me with Vole and Arrow. And actually, the first jump I ever hit, we went down to Chile for a catalog shoot. I was with Vole and Arrow and Nimala, and we played rock, paper, scissors, and I lost. And those guys are up there, and I'm like, you guys really want me to go first right now when I'm with the two of you guys? And they're like, you lost, bro. You got to go first. It's rules are the rules. And I was strapping in to hit it, and Vole's like, is that the right speed? And I was like, yeah, I think so. He's like, you got to take 10 more steps up, and that's the right speed. So that was a solid lesson right there. Wherever you think it is, probably just a couple more. But yeah, did that.
Did you land?
Yeah, back 7 first try, and then I back 10'd it.
Damn.
Yeah, psyched. That was a good session. Billabong went on for a long time, was super solid. We had a big year. We were over in Whistler. We had a shoot. That was the same Space Cadet year, so a couple years ago. Things were lining up. They were gonna do it. They were fired up. I mean, Billabong's been in the game for like 20 plus years. And then the parent company, I forget who it is, but they just shut down the snow program. Basically, the same people that own Billabong own Quick
Yep.
and Ruka, I think. And Quick had a bigger snow program, so they just shut down the program. That was that. That was a tough blow for sure. I'd been with those guys for a while, and just like their support was kind of keeping me able to even get after it in the winter. So that was a tough one, but luckily the doors opened up at Jones and they were doing outerwear. So it's been pretty rad, and I'm the driest I've ever been out there. Woo, woo, woo.
You sweat, you die, right?
It's a classic scenario.
No, that's bullshit. If you don't sweat, you're not trying hard enough. And I don't trust splitboarders that don't sweat. Besides my buddy Garrett Warnick,
He doesn't sweat?
He doesn't sweat. He does not sweat when he splitboards, but it's a myth.
How does that work? Because when I go up to Snowbird or Brighton going on the smallest hike, like up, I'm sweating.
I sweat when I eat, man. I can't strap into my splitboard without breaking a sweat.
How does that work?
I like Shane's technique of no goggles, blower pow, sunscreen smeared all over your face.
Yep, safety third. So, no, the sunscreen, you always got to bring sunscreen.
Yeah. Eye protection, debatable. Sunscreen, check.
Well, it's more like training for your eyes, because eventually those goggles might be jacked, and some people are like, it's time to go home. But if you've been training, then you're good.
Yep.
Yeah, or you just bring multiple lenses.
Yep.
I feel like I do, and it never works.
His goggle management is fucking terrible. Terrific. So the year that the Billabong thing happened, that was Northbound and Around.
Northbound and Around, yeah. Me and my buddy Johan Rosen, super rad dude, Swedish transplant to Canada. We met through Justin when we had filmed Channel Zero, and we both were fired up, and we just did a homie movie. We rode as much as we could around BC, and we had a couple homies that joined us for different trips, and he whipped it together with a little bit of my help, and we threw it on shred bots. And it was a fun project for sure. Got to discover a lot of BC, which is like endless, and been a good, training route to get after all those zones.
Johan seems similar to you, that he shares that stoke for every day.
Yeah, he's actually always happy, which is crazy, because I go through things like, especially you're on a bike ride to Alaska or something, you're going to hit some low points. But Johan doesn't have low points. I don't know how he does it, but he is just one of those guys that is happy all the time. God bless.
Yeah.
Okay, so we briefly talked about this bike mission. Let's really put ourselves in the scene here. You're riding a bicycle from, where was it? Nelson?
Terrace, BC.
Terrace, BC.
So we're about halfway up Canada, and the goal was to end up in Haines. We all had bikes with bike trailers and some small tents, split boards. I actually had a keyboard on the back of my bike because I wanted to be the first person ever to bike tour up to Alaska with a keyboard. I'm not sure if that is a solidified fact in the world, but I know I've done it. If you know anybody else that's bike toured to Alaska with a keyboard, let me know. Hopefully they've done it after me or not done it at all.
Yep.
But
So it's like you're going on a bike ride. How long? We'll get there in 40 days.
well, we really didn't know anything. So we had 1,300 kilometers.
But what are we talking? Like every day is like the longest bike ride ever for 30 or 40 days.
You find your flow. So we went up to Terrace. We rode at Shames Resort, which is epic. If you guys ever get to Shames, it's a co-op resort. It's owned by the city. Epic place. Started off the bike ride, and we started off with a crew of 5 of us, and we actually had a little safety car, if that's what you want to call it. And I remember day 1 was really tough. I think my tires were deflated like halfway, and we were riding a pretty busy section of the road because the goal was to do the Cassiar Highway. And the Cassiar Highway is this highway that runs from just north of Terrace all the way up to the Alaska Highway. It's kind of the back route. Didn't do any biking, like I had said, and I also didn't look at what we were doing. I had no idea. So it's definitely pretty interesting. So day 1 was tough. We pulled out of town, and it was a super hard ride. Like, we had to get up to Kitawanga, where you turn left to get on the Cassiar Highway, and it's about 100 Ks, and that was the roughest 100 Ks because there's a lot of traffic. We're brand new. Bike tires were probably deflated, and we're on mountain bikes with bike trailers too, so these things are pretty hard to pedal. And then I think day 2, we pulled into the Cassiar, and I was in front of the group, and it's like 3 miles onto the Cassiar. This trucker just pulls over and stops in the middle of the road as I'm going up this hill on my bike, and he's all, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's just freaking out on me. He's like, either you're going to die or you're going to kill one of us. And I hadn't done any research into this trip, and I'm there by myself getting yelled at by the first trucker to pass me on this road, telling me that I'm going to die. And I'm just like, okay, what did I get into here? And the real crazy thing is, like, what I don't think any of us expected was how industrialized it was. Like, there's just mines and logging. So every single time you're getting passed, it's by a logging truck with like thousands of kilograms of wood on the back, and there's about 5-foot snowbanks, so you have like barely any room. So when a truck passed you from the back, it was like you just didn't know what was going to happen. And every time you just take it, you go as far over to the side as you can, and you just kind of hope for the best. And if there was ever a moment that 2 trucks were going to be passing each other, you just got to hop off your bike and just get to the snowbank as quickly as you can. Like, that was the sketchiest thing because these trucks were unhinged. So plan was to split board off the side of the road. But once we started going and snow camping and just like biking, we were trying to do about 100 kilometers a day, which was pretty tough, like maybe 8 hours of biking. And, yeah, it was a total struggle to get up there. So we'd been biking for a while, camping on the side of the road, getting super wet, getting super tired. You wake up the next day, you're on the highway, your boots are soaked, and you're just looking up at the mountains around you. You're like, yeah, right, I'm not going to go split board right now. You know, it's just totally beat. And then we were kind of running out of time too, because we wanted to get up to Haines at an appropriate time, so we had time to kind of milk it up there. We got up to Jade City, and we were still a 5-man crew. And there was a little bit of friction in the crew. We had D-Wad. He was out jibbing this spot behind the building. And then this other kid who's kind of new and trying to figure out his role. So when we started, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot here, but when we started the bike ride, we really didn't have like roles. Who was going to do what's the team leader. And I think that kind of put us in a little bit of a bad spot, because if everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, I think it's a little bit easier for people to fall into those roles. But when everybody's kind of arguing over like who's got the biggest, you know, it gets a little bit more frustrating for everybody. So that accumulated to sort of brawl in Jade City, which I want to set the scene for you guys. Jade City is a one-horse town on the side of the Cassiar Highway where they'd been mining asbestos for years, and there's only one building in this town, and they only sell jade. So you've got this beautiful stretch of highway. You're in the Alaska mountains, and at about 7 o'clock in the morning, you could hear a pin drop, and then all of a sudden a full brawl breaks out between the crew. And then you just hear me yelling, "We're all fucking friends here," going crazy, you know. And after that, we realized that it wasn't gonna work out for us to get up there the way we were doing it. So we actually split crew. We decided me, Cater, and Johan, who were kind of like the more people had put this together, and those guys were doing a sequel to a movie they had done where they had taken a canoe down the Columbia in some frigid weather. We decided we were going to keep on going, and so we lost our safety car. And at this moment, too, we were kind of in between huge sections of the road. Like, we would stay in a hotel where we could, but then you'd do like 400 kilometers where there was just nothing. And so at that time, we had to be pretty well packed up, pretty well dialed in, and we were just camping in our tents on the side of the road wherever there was a pullout. But after we lost the crew, we were like running out of food. So we decided to leave Jade City, and we're on like 5 rations of top ramen left. And worst of all, I'm biking for 8 to 10 hours a day, and my stash has been depleted. And I don't know if you guys have biked for 8 to 10 hours for a day, but if you don't have a stash and you're trying to do that, you're just like, I'm just going to go absolutely mental in my mind, you know, like, it was helping me cope with the time. So I just realized then, I was like, what am I going to do? So I busted out the Sharpie, and on the back of my jacket that I had, I just wrote in big letters, "I need weed, please." So that day, we're riding up. Three cars stop. 3 cars stop on the first day. On the first day, I've got like an 8. By day 4 of wearing this thing, I've got like a ½ ounce of weed, and we're totally out of food. And we're all like, yes. Should we switch the sign to "I need food" or something like that? But no, we're like, the road provides. And that's the beauty of taking away the safety car, is you put everything into the road. The road provides, you know. So the next day, had a bunch of weed. We rolled up to the Alaska Highway. We're still doing, so at this point, there's just 3 of us, and we're just going to get to Haines. So we're riding 100 kilometers a day for the next 2 weeks. And me, Johan, and Cater, we've already been doing this for 2 weeks, and we're in good shape. We're just busting out as much as we can. And once we get up to the Alaska Highway, we're on like our last ration of top ramen. I remember that morning. I woke up, had a top ramen, rode the bike for 5 hours, and stopped at lunch, had another top ramen, which at this point, the body was depleted. For sure. And that night, we rolled into this like 1-horse town that we could see on the map. And the only thing around is this one house that's being ran by a generator. And out front, there's like 10 wolves. They're like wolf-husky mix, but it just looks like there's 10 wolves out there. There's nothing else around. And I remember Johan went up to the door and he knocked. And like 20 minutes later, he came back out and he's got all these cans of food. And he's like, "They're going to cook us cheeseburgers. We're saved." So we camped out that night. The next morning, we had the cheeseburgers. We had like soup from the little cans, and I spilled a can of soup on myself, and I doused my puffy, which was like my big survival item, because you're biking with everything that you're going to have for the next 2 weeks, but you also don't want to overdo the bike setup. So it's like 1 extra t-shirt, 1 puffy, you know. And Puffy was destroyed. But next morning, those kind fellows let us in their house. We had some coffee with them, dried out the Puffy. And on the way back, actually, they told us about a cinnamon roll spot. So we grabbed the cinnamon roll for them, and we stopped on the way home and said, "What up?" because we drove home from that one. But yeah, we just gave ourselves to the road. We were filling up our water bottles off the side of the road. People were stopping, and Tailgate Alaska was going on too. I still had this thing on my back that said, "I need weed." So there was like, you know, again, we're the novelty item. Everybody's pulling over. They're giving us, you know, beers, whatever we needed, which was rad. This little homie hooked us up with enough food to kind of like make us. I think Johan gave him a 50 and he gave us a bunch of cans of like Chef Boyardee or something, which was all we had until we got to the next town. And we crushed it out. We did like 1,200. We did, you know, 10 days of probably solid 80 kilometers a day every day. And then we got up to Haines. And we partied super hard, and we got super hungover, and it was sunny for the next like 3 days. So we're just like the biggest pile of shits up there for like the next day. The day after that, I think we fly out with Drake. We do the scope flight, which is crazy too. That was my first scope flight, and you're over the huge range, and it's like, where are you going to be dropped off? And it is a pretty crazy decision to make, just because the possibilities are endless, and you're trying to figure it out. And none of us had done that before either, so it was a big learning curve. And then after that, it just went full overcast for the next 4 weeks. So we had a few windows. We were staying at Steve Herschel's. Everything smelled like fish. Steve Herschel built this place, so there's like a wall, and then there's like a little crack about 6 or 8 inches. You walk behind that, there's another bedroom. You go to the right, there's like a crazy bathroom. I mean, this place was insane, like beds made out of hay and stuff. I didn't trust any of that shit. I was stressed out. So I set my tent up in the inside of the house. I was still sleeping in my tent, and I was still pulling the zipper shut all the way at night because I was like, dude, this is sketchy for sure. And he's a crazy guy. He's got like this Faraday cage, and we want the Wi-Fi on, and every time he is like, you guys are going to die. You guys are going to die with this Wi-Fi on. And eventually, like 3 weeks later, we've just been splitboarding on the side of the road and getting nowhere kind of because we don't know what's going on. And I ran into Ryland in the grocery store in Haines, and he's like, dude, you guys look pretty bummed. Why don't you just come over tonight? And I came over that night, and he's like, there's this abandoned mining shack on the side of the mountain that you guys could probably splitboard to, and then from there, you guys could probably access it. So we had that in mind, and he had some photos of it, so we didn't have a GPS coordinates. We just had like photos from different areas, and we're like, all right, we're going to go up there. And we had like a 1-day weather window, so we packed up our small, like 25 liters with whatever we needed. We splitboarded up there in the storm, which was like full whiteout, so we're like stumbling around trying to find this cabin, and we do eventually find this like dilapidated old mining shack. It's all locked up, but we're able to like bust in. There's a tiny fireplace with a little bit of wood, which is so huge because that means we're not going to be having super soaked boots the next day. We get to this mining shack, and then you've got these insane mountains in the background, and we're like, oh, holy shit. And there's also this massive traverse that we have to do under this super sketchy snow, and we're like, well, we're not going to do that today. We'll just do that tomorrow at like 3 a.m. because that's going to be the time that it's safest. If you travel in the mountains at night, it's a little bit safer if you know where you're going because chances of avalanches are less. Everything's cold. You're not dealing with temperature changes. So the next day, we splitboarded all the way from the road to the top of Caffeine, staying in this little shack for the night. And I remember the next day, there was like a huge storm, and it was like 3 feet of pow that we were splitboarding through. So it took us forever to get up there.
Was that shack up on the hill in the woods there?
Yeah. Wow. That was that shack. And we got up there, and I remember I dropped in first, and I was thinking I was going to have to look back, and I just did those first 2 turns, and I could tell the snow was bomber under my foot, like 2 feet of locked in snow, and I just didn't even have to look back and shredded that thing. And that was the only run that I got to do in AK for the whole bike trip. It was still worth it, but it was one run to bike all the way to Alaska.
Because after that, it just got shit?
It was just shit, dude. We had no weather windows. And then that's when Andrew sent me the photo of Jeremy and Forrest riding spines in Tahoe. And I was just like, God damn it, dude. What is happening? Mammoth was having this insane year. And that's when, after that bike trip, we drove back down. The car broke down on the drive down. On the drive up, it broke down too. It's just everything, Murphy's Law for sure. And then I hightailed it to Mammoth for meeting up with Jeremy and those guys. And that was my first time kind of doing a springtime camping, and super eye-opening.
Wow.
So biked for how many days?
I don't know the exact days. We did actually splitboard off the side of the road. And one day we were stuck in Mesiatin Junction, and we were like eating with all these loggers and stuff. And they're basically like, it had snowed 6 inches on the road, and they're like, if you guys go today, you're going to kill yourselves or you're going to kill one of us trying not to kill you guys. And they drove up the road 70 kilometers to their logging site, and they drove back to where they knew we were at the hotel or mining camp. I don't think I'd call it a hotel. This place was crazy. You'd go to order food, and they had a full menu, but you had to say like, I would like the cheeseburger, but I will take anything you will cook for me, sir. And they would just give you whatever they felt like cooking you. Like, you couldn't ask for anything. It was super crazy. Anyways, these guys drive back, and they're basically like, yeah, you guys can't go today. So that held us back for a day. And I mean, thanks for those guys for looking out for us for sure. But we had a few rest days. I'm going to say the total bike ride was about 40 days. to get up there, maybe 30 days, a lot of days, 100 kilometers a day. It was like 1,500 kilometers total. So like 15 days of biking, but you know, the days that there was a lot of snow on the road and stuff like that, we'd maybe only get 50 kilometers.
One run.
And that was all for the one run.
Good run.
It was
run.
probably the best one of my life for sure. After all that, and then splitboarding up there and getting on top and being the first one to drop and just like feeling that snow locked under me, because you don't know. Splitboarded for a while, but there's a lot of fresh snow, and you know, if you drop in and you feel like something might break, you're gonna have to look back and look around and see what's going on. But right away, I did like the first 2 turns, and I just knew it was locked in, and I could just rip into this thing.
Such a cool story. I mean, it's about as pure as the pioneers, you know?
It is.
They'd probably be
yep.
proud. Because when you said you had the keyboard when you biked up there, I bet the only people that had brought a piano was through a wagon. So they never put it on a bike.
They never put it on the bike.
So
I had a box of wine and a keyboard. Those were my saving grace items right there.
That's incredible.
Dude, I remember while you were doing this, you would post these like selfie videos, which hopefully maybe you can dig a couple of these up for when this comes out. But like, I remember you'd be like filming yourself on the bike, like on the side of the freeway, and you're just like, fucking Worm is out of his mind. It's incredible.
Dude, it was Johan, like we lost the filmer, so we were setting up cameras too, which takes more time, but he was filming drone from his bike, following us for hours. He would just be like on the drone, riding his bike. It's absolutely crazy.
Wow.
But it was a crazy experience, and then going from there, I was so motivated because I'd just been skunked, and it felt like the season was kind of ripped away from me. I'd spent all this time bike riding, and Alaska didn't pan out, so hightailed it down to Mammoth, and that's where I met Inaki and went out with Jeremy for the first time, which was super eye-opening. And we went out to Bishop, and the next day we're on these like 3,000-foot vertical runs that look just like AK with 2 feet of POW in late April. So it was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Insane. So you went psycho on the spines, I'm guessing.
No, I mean, Eastern Sierra is a little different than Alaska for sure. But that was my first springtime mission too, which is actually when splitboarding gets tough because you wake up in the morning and everything's icy. So I remember rolling out of camp. We had like a 6-person crew, and Forrest and Jeremy and Inaki, and everybody makes it up this little hill of ice, and I'm just in the back, like on the splitboard treadmill behind him, like, I'll see you guys later. So I had to like figure out how to splitboard in ice, which is like, you know, it's pretty easy to splitboard through powder, but once you get to
What's your technique?
A little bit of everything. You got to get those edges in, and then you use your pole on your downward foot. So let's say you're going to make a step, then you put your pole there so it can't slide, and then you just try to jam in that left foot and keep it going. But it's been a lot of splitboarding since then, and Anaki's been a good coach, so he's been helping me with all this shit.
Wow.
Love it. Silk, we haven't had any Patreons. Why don't we serve up a couple of those?
Yeah.
Also, thanks for our Patreon members that support the show. We couldn't do this without you guys, and thank you so much for making the show happen. And you guys fucking rule.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your support. We're going to hit a question from Nathan Pascal. You seem to live life close to the bottom line on the budget. What's the go-to cheap food for these big adventures?
You know, I think if you got the kitchen, my favorite thing to do is you get like a pack of rice, because up in AK, when we're camping on the side of the road, we're just cooking over an open fire in a frying pan. So we'd get like Ben's rice and a little bit of meat or something, and that would do the trick. And then also, I touched on it a little bit, but when you go up and the road provides a little bit. So when we were up in AK this year for 40 days, people were dropping off king salmon and king crab. They were hooking us up, which was super awesome. And then, of course, Top Ramen's a pretty good backup.
Fantastic. He's got another one. Tee that one.
We'll hit Nathan's other question. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Nate.
Your writing and love for snowboarding just seems so authentic. It seems pure yet thoughtful. What culture, music, and art inspires you beyond snowboarding?
Ooh, well, I definitely came from the era of like Jack Kerouac, Ginsberg. Like when I was like 15 and 16, I was just reading all the beat stuff that was coming out of San Francisco, which has a lot of like spontaneity and kind of adventure based. And I think that was like a big influence in my life at a young age. And now, like, I just read that Craig Quelly quote outside that's like, you know, it's all about the experience. And I think trying to make the most out of the experiences and just embracing whatever situation that you're in.
Yeah, I think the quote roughly says, I have the utmost respect for the superhuman freestyle maneuvers that are happening, but my true admiration goes out to the person that's just out there in the mountains enjoying the experience, is kind of essentially what the quote is that you was elaborating on.
Yeah, a lot of that. And Beatles, jazz, whatever makes you feel good. Yeah.
Also, the kid's a problem on the keyboard.
Still learning. Lifelong learner. That's how I would describe myself there.
All right, we're going to take a quick break with a message from one of our sponsors, Insta360. They're a leader in action cameras and 360-degree technology, and they got a new camera for you for this snowboard season. The Insta360 X4. It's exactly what you're looking for. You set it and you forget it. You don't need any help. You don't need a filmer. This camera does it all. You just hit record, do your runs, do your backflips, do your little tricks, whatever you want to do. And when you're done, you get to pick the angle. Any angle. 360 degrees. That's a lot of options. From immersive point of views to third-person shots, so you carving down the mountain, the Insta360 X4 does it all. You even get hands-free 360-degree shots while you shred with the ski pole mount attachment. You're going to get over 2 hours of runtime at 5.7K resolution. That's higher than 4K. Pretty dang good. And it's going to have you filming ice-cold content. Perfect for social media in temperatures down to -4 degrees. It's super tough and waterproof for any wipeout. Easy to use, even with all your gear on. All right, we're going to take a quick intermission here to talk to you about our good friends over at Pub Beer, who just happen to be the official beer of questionable decision-making and cheap fun. That's right. You heard it here first. Whether you're just having a couple, maybe you're watching the game, Pub Beer's a great option. Cheap fun. Maybe you need 50. Did you just get dumped? Pub Beer's got you covered. Cheap fun every time. Pub Beer.
Let's talk about Inyo and Worms, because that's kind of seems like where we're heading from here after this bike trip situation and the camping with Jones and everybody. Let's just talk about the inception.
Yeah, the inception kind of followed the line of like, there was this, I feel like this open void in splitboarding, which has kind of been occupied by people that, you know, don't know who Change That Tape is. And
most important part of snowboard history, for the record.
Yeah, I just felt like I wanted to do what I was doing, but do it on a splitboard. And I mean, we talked about the Craig Kelly quote, but going up to AK this year, you know, we had a super tight budget, and snowboarding to me is about the experience and being in the mountains, and you know, not necessarily having the biggest budget, but still making things happen, which I think Splitboard is conducive to that as well.
You keep talking about Alaska, but one of the Inyo and Worms adventures I watched, you guys went to Patagonia. That trip looked mental.
Yeah. So I met Inaki down in Mammoth, and we were just like, dude, let's do a splitboard let's do a freestyle splitboard project, and let's throw it on YouTube, and you know, let's try to get people that aren't maybe core snowboard people to watch it, and let's get core snowboard people to watch it. That was the whole deal. Like, if we do adventures, you know, people like adventures, yada, yada, yada. So the next thing after Mammoth was trying to go down to Patagonia, and obviously Inaki is from Patagonia. He spent a lot of time in that area, so I was like, 2 months, gonna go down there for the whole season. We're gonna film some episodes. So the first thing we did, like, the snow year was pretty bad, but we went out to the Fray, which is behind, where is that?
Cerro Catedral.
Yeah, it's behind Catedral. And stayed in the cabin back there, and that was epic because there's a lot of terrain that you got to be pretty on it. Like, it's a lot of mountaineering stuff. You're scrambling over rocks, and there's a lot of exposure. So there's a huge thing going out there. Nick Russell was with us, and also Manu Dominguez and Matty. It's a sick crew down there, and that was like a really good time for me to kind of hone in the splitboarding skills. I was still trying to figure it out a little bit and figure out how to be comfortable. Like I said, I didn't come from a place of mountaineering, which a lot of people do that are splitboard focused. And, you know, the biggest thing out there is like getting to the top of the peaks. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to Alaska. But yeah, I spent the whole season down there. We filmed our first episode was all in the fray, all splitboarding, and that was really fun. And then the next episode, we actually did this double rappel couloir. It's my first time ever rappelling in my life, and I got like a 2-minute lesson the night before.
What would you do? You would ride down and then rappel twice in the chute?
Yeah, so we start by hiking this mountain. We ride down and we get to the top of the couloir and everything is funneling off this huge cliff. So like until you're hooked up, you just don't want to make a mistake. And obviously nothing can break at that moment. Like you've got to be so convinced that the snowpack is good. But also it's got to be powder. Otherwise, what's the drive to go ride a shitty couloir, you know?
Yeah.
So we get up there and this is my first rappel and I had practiced, but I didn't have a Prusik on, which you got to move the Prusik with the belay device. And also your Prusik gets totally caked in snow out there. So I'm like on the side of this rock wall and it's not perfectly up and down. So I'm just getting banged around this couloir for the first time in my life trying to rappel. And everybody's yelling at me in Spanish too, which like I can understand some things. I definitely can't understand anything when there's got 3 Argentinians yelling at you, trying to help you out. And you're just like stuck on this wall. And I'm afraid of heights too. So this was like crazy. But once you got down to that place, there was a point of no return. So we make it down the first rappel pitch, which was crazy, just like smashing into rocks and stuff. I've got my snowboard on one foot, which is apparently the way Inaki told me to do it, but you're just kicking shit and you got no place to put your feet. It's just a ridiculous experience. And then we get down to the second one, and the guy who's kind of leading our charge on this super epic homie, he's like, check this out. I set up on a rackle cloth. I said that wrong, but it's basically like there's this huge piece of ice and nobody wants to leave gear out there because that's a bad look. So you basically take an ice screw and you drill 2 holes in this big chunk of ice and then you put the rope through it. After you rappel, you can just yank the rope. But I get down there and our rope for the anchor is attached to a piece of ice that just got carved out. And they're like, just take it easy. Just don't pull too hard. Just go slow. And I can't tell if they're fucking with me or not. But either way, I'm just like so gripped at this point. I can't believe we're rappelling off like a chunk of ice out there. But we made it through it. It was a super rad experience. And then the run at the bottom was this insane couloir between like 200-foot rock walls with big pieces of ice coming down. And then from there, it was like, you know, it was pretty game on in my mind. Like I'm not there to rappel for sure, but that was a crazy experience and kind of like, all right, this is pretty darn cool. And then after that, we went and just me and Inaki, we went and built a snow cave at this brand new zone he never went to. And we camped out in the snow cave at the bottom of this little zone and we hiked it to ourselves the next day, which was pretty rad. And, you know, I don't know a lot of people in snowboarding that are like, yeah, I'll just go, me and you, and we'll just hike up to the mountain to some brand new spot. We'll build a snow cave and we'll see what's out there, you know? So it's like being with Inaki, somebody who's down to do that and also down to like try to get some freestyle shots while we're at it is a pretty perfect.
When you guys say the snow cave, like how big is this and what are you bringing? Because it seems like it's cold if you go sleep in the desert in the fall. You know what I mean?
Minus 20-degree sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Stove and small tarp. And you just build a cave. Hopefully it's not too hot because it'll drip on you at night, which kind of sucks. You just put the tarp down and get all cozy. The minus 20-degree bags are pretty insane, though. Like, I learned that from Alaska. You pretty much stay warm. And as long as you're not out for more than like 3 or 4 nights, your bag kind of stays warm. The big downside is at the end of the day, you just got to stuff your super shitty, cold, like, blown out, disgusting boot liners into the bottom of your sleeping bag. Otherwise, they have no chance of drying. This dries them a little bit, but then the whole sleeping bag just reeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's more like a snow. It's like a dome, like a half dome.
Yeah, like a half dome.
It's not like a full cave. It's like a little kind of hole in the snow.
A million ways to skin a sheep out there, you know, to each their own.
I like it. So that brings you, and then the next year was that Alaska?
Yeah, so that was kind of like last summer, and then this summer, Inaki came up to Nelson, and we just started where we left off. We did a trip where we took sleds up to a cabin, and then we splitboarded from the cabin. We did another snow cave episode, trying to kind of discover the area. We went down. I didn't talk to Jeremy. I was trying to talk to Jeremy. He's a hard guy to get on the phone, Jeremy Jones, and he texted me. He's like, I have 2 days. And that was like the only confirmation I could get from the guy. So we just like pinned it down to Tahoe. We rode 2 days with Jeremy, which was super awesome because we wanted him involved in the first year for sure. And I mean, anytime you go out with Jeremy, he's like the absolute maestro of snowboarding. Like the way he approaches the mountains is super unique. He's so in tune with things, and he's also really in tune with snowboarding shots. Like he's got a deep relationship with the mountain, but he's also got a deep relationship with filming. So the way he approaches his lines is like, okay, that's going to come into the sun now. I'm going to ride that, and just like a lot to learn from that guy every time. So it's grateful. And from there, we just jammed down to do an episode with Nick and Alex Andrews, Nick Russell, and got absolutely smoked. Walked like 30 miles in the Eastern Sierras in 2 days, and
Wow.
was so smoked. And then we kind of set our sights on Alaska after that, and just wanted to spend the rest of the season up there.
I want to just kind of circle back on some stuff that you said. With editing, these things are kind of like a turn and burn situation a little bit, where you're like on the road, but you have to edit. And they're a tremendous amount of work. You do a great job with sound design and all this stuff. I'd love to hear you talk about how difficult the process is of like, also before when we met, when we were filming Pepper and all that stuff, like you weren't much of a video editor. You weren't much of like a videographer. All of a sudden you're like producing your own project and you're fucking editing it in a tent on the side of the road.
Yeah, necessity, man, will make you do anything. But after we filmed this stuff in Argentina, I was like, we got to edit it. So I bought a new computer and just started working on it. And it seems like to me, I just want to have like a kind of a storyline that bops along and, make sure there's a lot of sections. And it's been really fun trying to learn that side of it and try to tell a story a little bit more. And also you realize like, what you should and shouldn't say and how much you should be kind of like explaining things versus just doing things. So it was a experimental process. And then that was mainly pretty cool. Like the Argentina ones, we had a lot of time to work on. And then this winter we wanted to do a release in real time. So it was just grinding, trying to get it done and working with Anaki to something we were both happy with. And then once we hit the road to Alaska, it got super crazy because, like you're saying, we're in the side of the road on the tent. So the tent held up super good, and I was just in there editing on all the down days. Got the generator blasting out back, and that was the grind.
That's so dope.
Wow. When you guys had to get gas, would you bike to town and then come back?
This year?
Yeah.
No, we just drive to town.
Just drive.
I had my truck up there, and then... Yeah, and then at the end of the year, we had our big trip that we wanted to fly into the glacier. That was kind of the big goal for the year. So we assembled the crew of Carver and Jason, and we got dropped off up there. And then it was just a huge learning experience, like being in that huge zone and trying to figure out where we can go and what we can ride. And we when we got up there, the Bergstroms weren't that big. So for the first like 3 days, Anaki has a lot more rope experience than me. So I was like, you know what? I'll just walk across the Bergstroms first, and if I fall in, you can come and save me. You're the rope guy. And so that was the MO for the first like 3 days. And on like the third day, we're hiking this crazy face, and the snow's not that good. But I get up to the bottom, and I'm at the Bergstrom, and it's got a big lip, the first like really big one that we had to cross. And I got my first look inside. And meanwhile, we forgot the rope at camp, so we had two safeties that were like 10 meters long, maybe 15 feet long. So maybe we had 30 feet of like thin paracord between us. And I take a look down, and this thing just goes for like endless 250 feet of just like crazy ice pouring into the world. And after that, I would walk straight back down. I was like, dude, we got to rappel for every single one of these things. And then the next week, our weather got warmer. It just got sunnier. So all these Bergstroms that were manageable, like what we splitboarded over the first day was like a 4-foot Bergstrom on the end of the trip. And it was crazy. Like all of the places we wanted to go were slowly evaporating. And then, the chass rock starts to fall in on you, and you're just like, that's crazy.
Wow.
What's a chass rock?
Just like all the loose rock up there as snow starts to melt.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I remember on our flight in, Drake's like, I got in the plane first. You got dropped off out there, and it was super overcast. And I'm supposed to have everything I need to survive. But at the last minute, we hustled some bags around. So I have like a small tent, I got a stove, and I've got some food, and I've got my InReach. And I get out there, and he gets dropped off, and he's all like, So if I don't come back for another few days, you're good here? And, this is my dream. I'm like, yes, sir, I am good. Take it off. And he leaves, and then I'm just out here on this glacier, like in the middle of nowhere, and I'm going through my backpack. I'm like, I'm just going to grab my InReach before I do anything else. And then InReach was in the other bag because I'd packed. So all of a sudden I was out there, and I was like, holy shit. I have no communication back to the mothership whatsoever. I don't know if these other guys are coming in. So that was a huge thing. I was like freaking out for a bit, and I was like, all right, I just got to keep doing, like, this is the thing Nico taught me. It's like when you don't know what to do, you just got to keep doing what you can do. So I took out my probe, and I was just probing right in front of me like a madman because I was by myself, and I knew there was no communication. If something had happened in this moment, it would be the worst moment. But I got to the safest spot, brought all the stuff over there, and then like an hour later, Anaki showed up, and I was like, thank God. And then he took us in one by one. So it was like Anaki landed, Jason came up, and Carver came up, and we were all there, and we were just super stoked. And then next day is Bluebird, and we're at the bottom of this crazy wall, and all these zones kind of funneled right back to our tent. So you just leave in the morning, you splitboard for 2-3 hours, maybe splitboard for an hour, and then boot pack. Use the ski poles as an ice axe because hopefully the snow's good enough. And the ski poles, the Jones poles, are super solid, so you can just slam them into the snow and get up there. And then you can ride right back to the tent at the end of the day. It's like the ultimate party lap. And I think I told you this the other day, but I was like, not maybe necessarily going pro in a route where somebody has called me pro. Like, I don't necessarily like to call myself that. I haven't had a pro model or something like that. So I don't know what my exact contribution to snowboarding is, but when I got Jason up there and we facilitated that, I'm like, all right, this is a solid thing. We got J-Rob up to Alaska. We're all shredding. We're snow camping. Like, that's something I felt pretty proud of.
That's a special moment.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really special, and it felt kind of full circle because I just remember going up in Champery with Jason, and I was just like enamored. I looked up to him so much, and then him coming up to AK, and the roles had almost changed where he was a little bit more new to splitboarding, and especially like hiking the mountains and tackling it. Of course, his riding was insane, but just, having him ask me questions and everything, it was just this full circle thing that was pretty rad. And just to have that relationship and see where it's gone and where our paths have taken us, and then both of us being up there and being able to teach things different times throughout our lives, it was super special. And yeah.
Cool.
Isn't that the point of sharing, It's when you say that I hadn't seen Chris Coulter in a while. And he was like, I was just telling someone about you telling me the saying of don't let your breath meet your heart rate. And I was like, really? That's some good advice. But then it was like, oh, that's what sharing's about. Because when you share something at a point that you're in a high point with someone else, it may come back to you when you need it. And that's the circular effect of sharing. So that's so rad that you and J-Rob have flourished like that.
Yeah, definitely. I really like what you said there. You forgot it and it came around because everything hits people at a different time. And when you have something special to say, it might not even be that special, but the way that somebody else interprets what you're saying at that moment for them is pretty impactful.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, it's fantastic. I think about touring for some reason, totally different, but Forrest Shear once told me, like, fully extend your leg every time you take a step. Or no, actually, we were verting around. We were on verts. But every time you take a step, fully extend to conserve energy. And literally every time I'm walking around the mountains, I think about Forrest, just that one line.
That's pretty cool. I don't abide by any of that shit. I sweat. I'm terrible splitboarder. I overpack my bag. Like, everybody's cutting their toothbrush in half, and I'm like, got my grinder out there. I'm just like, dude, I'm gonna do it my way. If it's more energy, it's more energy. I'm just gonna get stronger at the end of the year.
Yeah, like
so
that.
It's better just to not know and just go.
Yeah.
Kinda. I mean, I think at the end of the day, people are gonna do what they want to do, and you don't need to have the nicest gear. You don't need to have all this crazy shit. You just gotta have the determination and some sort of a vision, and you get out there and you make the most of it.
My question is, if you think about being in these remote locations where if you fall, there isn't a rescue option, how do you manage the risk?
I think we're probably a little loose this year. I mean, the biggest risk is definitely avalanche, and I think Alaska's gonna slough. So slough is good. Slough is your friend. Work with it, but you're scared for big pockets of wind slab, and luckily a lot of those faces have a bunch of contours. So if there is a wind slab, it's probably pretty localized. The main thing is like you don't want to get caught in a deep slab, and this year was pretty good for that. And I think just taking your time, and it's a group effort, you know, like if I don't know something, I need to ask Inaki, and we're all going to talk about it as a group. And if we feel comfortable, then we're going to push up. And yeah, it was super crazy. Actually, on the last day of the trip, Carver rode this insane face that was a first descent up there. That is the most technical snowboarding that's probably ever been done. And for the three of us watching it at the bottom, it was a heart-wrenching 15 minutes. He was double ice axed going down the steepest spines that I think could ever be done. And that was the thing, Alaska, that I wanted to kind of circle back on too, is like when I got dropped off there in the helicopter and I was super scared at the top, like you can't be in that situation when you splitboard because you need to hike up whatever you're going to ride down. And for me, my ability to mountaineer is going to limit what I can snowboard on. And that's kind of like it has a lot of saving grace there. It's like if you can't get up, you can't get down. And for me, that was like the big thing in Alaska this year, is just trying to get up and those 50-degree faces that you're on for an hour boot packing, it just takes a lot. And I was talking to you about this last night. It's like I woke up day 10 on the glacier and I just felt like so adrenaline depleted because every day I'd been out there and I was just putting all into getting up these mountains. And then day 10, I just realized like I have nothing left. And it's not till you get back in a situation where you get your adrenaline going that you feel normal again, because it's just like so full on for a long period of time. It's definitely super crazy emotionally.
Yeah, did you have you basically sounds like you had like adrenaline hangovers almost.
I think so, man. Just like the closest thing I could relate it to was a music festival. Like you leave the tent, you go out and you have this extreme thing and you have like all these sorts of like crazy emotions and things running through your body, you know? And you get back and you're like, you can't really sleep. You can sort of sleep. You're thinking about the next day. And it's a tough wind down for sure. And I think just like even coming after a big season like that can be a little tough because you're so focused and driven, and then that gets taken away from you and you just got to find new places to put your energy into.
I'm curious how J-Rob did out there.
J-Rob was doing super good. He took his time, which was hilarious because we were walking under just massive overhanging cornices and all the worst places that you could be.
And your eyes are so fucked up right now.
For me, I was just walking as fast as I could to safety, you know, like you got to go through a huge cornice and you're just like, all right, you just want to get from A to B as fast as possible. But Jason was taking his time. He did not rush for anything. And that was pretty cool. I think he was pretty enamored with the idea of like getting to stare at these lines for a long time because his whole career up there was like fly over it in a bird and get one stare at it. And then that was it. And then all of a sudden he had the ability to just look at it for 3 hours before he rode it. So I think he was psyched on that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, maybe next year you guys set up camp just right at the bottom of Birthday Bowl there.
Dude, we kind of did that. We actually got some heat from the helicopter companies up there because we were right in the middle and they're all like, this is the best place that you can go this year. And it obviously wasn't. It was just like, you know, the place that we were. So of course it was the best place. But yeah, there's a little bit of friction.
I thought you mentioned off air an interesting story about how you can't ride what you can't get to with J-Rob.
Yeah, well, with any of us up there, like I touched on that being up on the first run, but when you're walking up the mountains, it's like your ability to get up is going to dictate what you can snowboard down. And for people that don't come from a mountaineering background, like getting up is really extreme. And Jason actually, he rode this really crazy spine line and went up with Carver on this super adventure double ice axe and made it happen. But yeah, it's definitely the limiting factor up there.
Love it. Okay, let's get into hot takes here. Here we go. First question we always ask is, who is your GOAT, your greatest of all time, both male and female?
Snowboard, let's go with Gigi. Solid. I think he's pretty much, his parts from Early Absinthe are pretty notable, Gigi and Nico. And yeah. Female, let me think. I mean, Victoria Jalouse is pretty sick. There's a huge zone out there called Buns of Steel that she named. So let's throw that out there.
Amazing. Would you consider snowboarding an art, sport, or lifestyle?
A little bit of everything.
Perfect.
I think depends how you approach it and how you let it integrate in your life. For us, I think it definitely is everything. It's our sport. It's our lifestyle. It's our passion, hobby. And honestly, my relationships changed. Just like being young, I didn't have quite the drive that I do now. And like I was saying, I was afraid to be just somebody that was one-sided. Like I was just a snowboarder. I didn't want to be just a snowboarder. But now I'm a little older. I'm fired up. I've got this thing. It's like I'm really embracing the fact that I'm a snowboarder and that's my identity, and spending time in the mountains is what I like to do. So
cool. In your opinion, who's one of the most underrated snowboarders?
Most underrated snowboarder, Jason. And definitely, I think there's some parallel, like you were saying, maybe the absence parts didn't always equivalent to getting more support. And I think Jason talked about that when he came on this podcast. He filmed an ender with absinthe, and the funds kind of ran out there at Mervyn for him and kind of threw him down a different path. But let's throw J-Rob out there for king of being underrated snowboarder. Always probably deserved a little bit more, but he blazed his own path. So that's pretty rad.
Okay, next question, steel or powder?
Come on.
Steel, I know. Good choice.
A down, flat down, all the stairs showing. You can't beat it, dude. Let me get the Ian bowboard out, fuck the base up a little bit so I can't even ride. That's my perfect day. Why don't we go to Harding? Get kicked out. Mm-hmm. Try something that nobody else has done. You're going to switch back 3 onto that thing?
Oh, yeah. Maybe Taco, the kink. Fucking go back for more. All right, who's got your favorite style ever?
Got to be Gigi too, right? I think for me, watching the way that he flipped, because like for me, that was a tough thing to get into. Shout out to Jagger for teaching me some flips. But yeah, when Gigi was born, everything he did was unique because the way he would rotate, like that nollie backside rodeo thing, he was on that game for a while, and Nico was doing that. But even just like the chicane, everything was off axis in a weird way, and that was so sick. And also just like the grabs.
Who's got your favorite method?
Dude, I like the above the binding, and I like when you go straight into it. I like straight into the method more than I do melon to kick out. So anybody out there that's going straight above the binding, straight into it, like Nico did, full arch back.
So is Nico? We need a name though.
Yeah, let's give it to Nico.
Okay, what's your favorite snowboard video ever made?
Future Proof.
Okay, what's your favorite board graphic?
Chris Grenier with the fisheye camera on the bottom, salamander.
Thank you, Worm. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no offense to Jones. You guys make the best boards.
If you go heliboarding 3 people, wiggling down POW, bring anybody from any time. Who are you bringing? Some people bring celebrities, choose your own adventure.
Dude, 3 people out there. I'll take Jason. I'll take Inaki. Dude, I'll take Carver too. I'll take the same crew from AK. We deserve a little heli time after all the work we put in.
Oh, yeah. If you could have one sponsor, dream sponsor, anyone in the world, any brand, what is it?
Wrap my head in a Red Bull dome piece. Woo! I'll be the happiest kid around.
Let's get this guy a bucket.
Get him a bucket, dude.
Get him the can head. Let's get him the can head. Okay, if you have to go to a step down, first try, must land, what trick you doing?
Back 7.
Woo! That's a good
I've
one.
seen it, and it works.
Yeah. Yep. Usually back 3s are easier for me than straight airs. Like we watched a shot at Super Park where I back 3'd off that hip, and I was planning on doing a straight air up that. But when I was rolling up the lip, I get afraid of like being on icy Super Park lips that have been super salted. So I'll do back 3 over straight air any day, even if it's a hip.
So I don't understand how you're so calculated without drifting.
Well, I do drift. That's the thing. You calculate the drift, and I think that's the best thing I have in snowboarding is like my ability to line things up. And even with the hip, like I don't think about it, don't do anything. I just roll into it, a back 3, and I come off the toes and I drift over, and I just kind of drift the right amount.
You're out of your mind. Okay, last question. Worst trend. What do you got?
Inclusivity, like being nice because you were told to be nice because that's what happened. Like my whole life in snowboarding, when I go up the hill, I want to be nice to everybody. I want to be inclusive with everybody. And there's never a moment in my snowboarding career where I would have not liked somebody or not given it. Like I'm not in the position to write contracts or any of that stuff, but I was always going to be nice to everybody in snowboarding. And I think some people had more negative outlooks, and they got to the point where a few years ago where you weren't allowed to do that. So they changed, and that's great that they changed and everything, but you just like be a genuine person because you want to be a genuine person and not because you're worried about getting canceled. Like that should be coming from a place that you understand is you, not because you're worried about what other people are going to think about what you're saying, you know?
I love that.
True story.
That's fantastic. Do what you believe in because you believe in it, not because you're scared people are going to be mad at you if you don't do it.
Yeah, and it's like if you're an asshole before all this stuff started happening, like, you know, and then you just start being nice afterwards, it's like, I don't know.
I love it. It's a great take. One thing we need to talk about too is your setup. What board? Well, let's talk hard body, solid, so to speak, and your splitty.
Solid is probably going to be hovercraft on both. Hovercraft 160, good to go.
Splitty and solid.
Splitty and solid. I like Stratos has been pretty sick, but I'm a hovercraft guy, front and center, especially like, you know, I thought what Nils did was super sick, but I'm not going to ride switch down a whole powder field. I'm a regular guy. I'm going to go down forward. So I like to have my setup be, you know, good for going forward. That's what I do. So the hovercraft, I mean, not that it's bad at it is bad at going backwards, but it's really good at going forwards, and that's what I like to do.
What bindings, solid and splitty?
On the solid, the Jones bindings, and on the split, I got the Karakorums, which are super money. Like the system that Karakorum does, they really pull the board together good. And I've heard some people talk about like, oh, splitboard's this, but I will be on my splitboard all day. Like it makes no difference to me. It feels such like a unit, and yeah, you get a little snow shooting at you in the middle, but as long as you don't look down and notice it, there ain't, you know, it rides beautifully.
How's the switchover time these days? Is the kid quick or?
I'm quick, dude. I learned that going out with the Nick Russell thing. It's like, I'm not going to be faster walking, so I got to make up time everywhere I can go. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of a race out there, too. I got a gnocchi on my tail at any point, so we're ripping skins off up at the top of Bright and Shane.
That's another question. You've never really, like, you've always been more focused on pushing yourself and not competitive with others. Has that always been like that? Or are you competitive, like, just secretly or silently?
Secret competitor.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I mean, you got to do what's going to be the best thing that you can do there. If I'm going to go hit a spot with Bodie and I'm trying to compete, I'm going to feel pretty bad about myself at the end of the day. But yeah, I think, like we talked about a little bit when we went to that spot with Ozzy and maybe even Ted got a shot there, we all rode it differently. So I think hopefully that. But yeah, when I go out, I definitely like to snowboard my best. And if Jared's watching, I like to land shit.
When upper management's up there, when upper management's up there, you got to put it down.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about this freaking, when you go into these mountains and you walk for like fucking days on end, or you bike for 40 days and then you splitboard up these giant mountains, like your cardiovascular fitness must be fucked up by the end of it. Like,
yeah, it comes in waves, man. I wish it was a little bit more, but it's a pure determination thing. I lack what I lack in physical strength. I make up in willpower for sure.
Nice.
When you get up there and you're staring at it, and it's like that's the last thing you got to do is get to the top. It's it'll happen. Yeah,
you just will it to happen.
Will it to happen? Yeah.
So you're not out there. You don't have your data on your nerd watch, and you're not like, oh, heart rate's 560. I'm going up to the top of Superior tomorrow. I got to get my reps up so I know that my cardiovascular fitness is up to par.
He's an off the couch marathon runner.
Yeah, I did that actually. No joke. Ran a marathon off the couch. Yeah,
nice.
That was back when I was younger, though. I was a little bit more ambitious back then. for sure.
27, whatever.
You were
did
off
the whole full marathon?
26.2.
Holy shit.
Wow.
He's literally off the couch marathon guy.
Yeah.
In mountains or flat or where was
Weren't you
this thing?
saying that about the bike ride? You just went and did it.
Well, that's because I knew how much worse it was going to be if I had tried beforehand. You know,
So it's a great philosophy.
yeah, you ride 30 kilometers and you suffer for 30 Ks and you're like, wait, I'm supposed to do this for 1,500. It's just not going to compute well. So it's better off not knowing what you're going to get into sometimes.
The more you know, the more painful it is.
Yeah, and that's helped me like with the rappel too. I think like not knowing we're gonna rappel off ice and stuff. There's a lot of things that are better to just be like forced upon you, forced down your throat than pre-hand knowledge of.
So any type of like really impressive physical feat, essentially your advice would be just don't prepare at all.
I don't know if that's solid advice. But I
like it. I think
anybody can
his
do
style.
anything. Yeah, like you don't have to have the lightest backpack and the best split board and the most insane gear to be out here doing cool stuff. Like, you know, there's a little bit of a myth to that, I think. People that want to be doing it are going to be doing it. So,
Okay. All right. What's next for Worm, aka Wormshaw?
headed back up to Nelson. Going to be up there with the lady for the rest of the summer. Probably hang out with Justin a bit. And I definitely want to go surfing. I'm on this air reverse tip. Air reverse is like when you do a 360 on a surfboard and then you keep spinning around. And that's like one of my big goals right now. I'm getting pretty close, but I haven't got the full air reverse, so I'm just itching.
The question is it a 360 or 540?
I don't care. I'm just...
Yeah, that's the best answer.
Yeah, whatever it is, I want it. I want it bad. So yeah, we got that, and then I'm just trying to set myself up for Alaska next year. I know that's the place I want to be. I know that's the place to be to do the snowboarding I want to do and keep on a roll. And got to make some money. I was just doing some framing, which was pretty crazy. Gonna go back, just hustle up this summer and try to make sure I got enough to make it to AK for another 40 days on the side of the road. Move into the neighborhood again.
Love it. That's fantastic.
If you could sum it up, what would be your number one advice for people in the world that you've learned from the mountains?
That I've learned from the mountains.
Don't prepare for anything.
Yeah, don't prepare. No, don't
do
not do something because you don't have something. Like, you know, don't be like, I can't do this because I don't have X, Y, and Z. Because the reality is once you get X, Y, and Z, are you really going to do it? Is it going to make that much of a difference? And I think the next thing I struggle with all the time is just like, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't flip open your phone and be like, oh, look at that person's life. It looks awesome. What the hell am I doing? And I think we all struggle with that in this day and age. But yeah, we're all unique. So let's not compare.
Fuck, that's fantastic. Well,
That statement was way better than anyone else's that I've heard.
Yep, that was really good. And that was also like that was a tough question. It was a big question.
That was a huge question.
And you just slated it. Yeah. So let's leave them on a high note. But lastly, do you want to throw any thank yous out before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks to everybody. I'll say thank you to my brother for sure. He got me into snowboarding. Shout out to my half brother, just passed away in a super unfortunate accident. So he's actually the guy that started me and my brother into snowboarding. So that was huge. Shout out to the Mammoth crew for hanging out. Shout out to Johan, the bike crew. Shout out to Jason and Carver and Inaki. And huge shouts to Inaki. He's been a rad person to be in the mountains with and learned a lot from him, and got a lot of love for that guy. And big shout out to all you guys, Justin, Absinthe, Chris, Pepper. I mean, we're all the people that we are now from those past experiences, and you guys and everybody else in snowboarding that I've met along the way has, you know, led me to where I am today and who I am. So thank you to all those people. Shout out to my girlfriend too. Yeah. Christina, shout out. And huge thank you to Jones. They're the best. They, everybody at Jones. We got Jeremy, Josh, Andrew, Greg, Tim, everybody that I don't know. You guys are absolutely amazing and making this possible for me. And, you know, what I've learned from all the guys along the way, Clark, Garrett Miss, Harry, everybody has been monumental. And then Karakoram, those guys have been super rad and supported the project and helped us through thick and thin. And Dragon, Andrew Mariner, has had my back since day one. So, yeah, huge thanks to those guys.
Killer. What a great show.
Good stuff.
I had a great time. Worm, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chris, for having me. It's been a blast to hang. It's been since Pepper, so it's just an honor. And, you know, you've had a pretty inspirational, where you're at right now and things is super inspirational for me. So getting down to here to hang out with you and see what the life you've carved out for yourself is amazing. And I'm stoked.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. My wife was like, I haven't seen you this excited as somebody come to town for a while. I was like so fucking pumped that you're coming. So I'm glad we're getting to hang for the next couple days. Silk, thanks for all that you do. Patreon members, thanks for all the support, all the sponsors, everybody that tunes in. Shane, thank you for hosting. And also, Shane, wondering if you could take us. Oh, lastly, also, if you haven't watched Yo and Worm's Adventures, Inyo and Worm's Adventures, make sure you fucking watch that on YouTube. Subscribe to all their shit. Make sure you watch all their stuff. And Shane, maybe you could do a sign off for us. Take us out of the show.
All right, coming all the way out of Bend, Oregon, Mammoth Lakes, California, Nelson, BC, Garrett Worm Warnick.
And that's how we wrap things up right there, boys.
Thanks for listening.
Hey, your stories are amazing, dude. Your life is incredible.
Hey, thanks for being here today, Shane. That was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Stoked to be here.